Hello everyone and welcome back to another Strategoy video. Man, I'm excited. It's Index Week and obviously since this was a Lumineth channel from the start, it isn't completely anymore now, but it's still like they get a warm place in my heart. I managed to convince Ryan to do the, well, you didn't need much convincing because you're super excited as well, right, Ryan? To do the Lumineth Realm-Lords index review first. So that's what you're getting today. I'm not solo, I'm not even duo, it's not only me and Ryan. We've also brought Siegfried to accompany us on this Lumineth journey. Ryan, thank you for joining us, and Siegfried, thank you for joining us.
Of course.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So guys, before we dive into it, let's look at a quick summary here of what you can expect from this index review, because we haven't really talked about indexes on our channel before, as in this is the first time we're doing an in-depth review of an index. So what can you expect? So it's a little bit akin to our battle tome reviews, where we will cover all the battle trades, the enhancements, and a couple of Warscrolls. So we don't actually cover all of the Warscrolls. We have two army lists for you to check out, and then we'll do a sort of a conclusion, I suppose, to finalize our thoughts on the index as a whole. This is an approach that we kind of want to generalize for all of the indexes, but then we have a specific extra game plan, I suppose I could call it, for the armies that we're knowledgeable and enthusiastic about. For example, in the next week, you can expect 4 more Lumineth videos, each of them breaking down one part of the Lumineth roster. So we're doing Warscroll breakdowns, basically. So you get 6 breakdowns now, but you get those and all the other ones in the separate videos as well. So this is more of a generalized, informative video with some subjective thoughts, but so also just to get your creative juices flowing. Maybe you want some people to explain stuff to you rather than just reading all of it. So that's what the index reviews are for.
And Jonas, if I can jump in for a sec, just for the other people out there, because our fan base, I guess, if you want to call it that, our followership has become much broader in the past months even. But for those of you out there that have no affinity for Lumineth, or you're looking for other content, I'm also in the middle of all these videos coming out, going to be just trying to make kind of other content. We're going to try to hit the indexes of the armies that we're more focused on or sooner than later, but it's going to take some time because it takes time to prepare all this stuff. But in the meantime, I'll try to keep making some of my own spin on things just to mix up the content on the channel. So you guys don't lose faith. If there's some army you're really wanting to see us do, and we hear enough of you guys say something about it, then we'll try to prioritize that if we can, okay? But in the meantime, it's going to be Lumineth heavy for a bit, and then we'll just try to balance it out as well as we can.
Yeah, great. Okay, without further ado, let's get right into it. So for the battle trades, we talked about this extensively in our faction focus, and with Ryan, and then I also talked about that with you, Siegfried, in our video that we did when the first test game was played on by GW, and it's called All the Lumineth Leaks So Far or something like that. So for this specific slide, we're going to cover the informative side of it mostly, and we're not going to get too much into the subjective sides about what we like most. But let's look at what the Lumineth get here. So we retain the lightning reactions, our very signature-esque ability. When players alternate picking units to use a fight ability, when it is your turn to pick a unit, you can pick 2 units instead of 1. Resolve the second fight ability immediately after the first. So for every 1 unit that your opponent gets to activate, you actually activate 2 units back to back every time. I saw some confusion in the Discord like last week, I think. Someone hadn't picked up about the fact that you could use this continuously, like they thought it was a one-time thing per turn, but it's actually, if you have 4 units in combat, you fight with 2, your opponent fights with 1, and then you fight with 2 yet again, just to clarify that here. I also made some notes on the interaction with strike first and strike last, because you might not have picked that up from the core rules. So if both players have strike first abilities, you alternate in picking those units first, starting with the active player. Which means that, let's say you have 1 strike first unit and they have 1 strike first unit, you would not be able to activate 2 units then, because you get yours 1 strike first unit first, then your opponent gets his, and then you're back to the usual order. Now, if you have 2 units that have strike first, then you could actually still use this ability, I think. Would you agree with that, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how it works.
Okay, Sieg, anything to add?
No, it's crystal clear, I think.
Okay. Also, just to clarify, this ability does not override strike first or strike last, by which I just kind of mean what I just said as an example. But, let's say you have Warden striking first, and then you have a debuff on a different unit that has strike last. You can't use a strike first and then right after that the strike last units, because you still have that strict order of levels that are split between, strike first, normal fighting, and then strike last. So yeah, that's lightning reactions. A pretty potent ability, especially since we've got some real strong melee punches in our army now compared to our previous books. So I'm more hyped about this than I used to be for Lumineth. Guys, please interrupt me if you want to add something, but I'm powering through here because we've already covered a bunch of this before. On to the Facets of War. So pretty quickly before we get into this, how a facet works, they're basically stratagems, like specific tactics that your Lumineth executes on the battlefield. And you get to choose 1 per round. That's important to remember, so 1 per round. It always says so, but it's interesting to keep that just in your head while we're at it. As you can see, 4 out of the 5 Facets of War are at the start of your round, which isn't always a good timing, to be honest. And only Move Like the Wind is during your shooting phase and not in the opponent's shooting phase, or not at the start of a round or whatever. Okay, let's look at Shining Company first, a signature ability that used to be on all our Venari. It's no longer so. You need to actually activate the Facet of War. And if you do, all of your Venari units do get it though. So that's pretty nice. So you still have the -1 to hit on all of your Venari units, but you need to choose this Facet of War. And remember, if you've chosen this Facet of War, you can't choose any other Facet of War unless you do it with a battle formation, which we'll get to in a second. Pretty strong ability. I kind of wish this was a battle formation. We will also get to that discussion in a bit. But the other Facet of War that interacts with the Venari is the Par of Hish ability. So this used to be a spell on all of the smaller Venari units, like the Dawn Riders and the Sentinels and the Wardens. They're not wizards anymore. They don't have this ability on their Warscroll anymore, so you can only choose 1 unit per battle round to have this ability. So that's a pretty big change here. The downside is, as I mentioned, it's only 1 unit that's going to have that for the entire battle round. Another downside is that you have to choose it in advance, so you don't actually know whether your opponent is going to interact with that unit as much. The upside is there's no unbinding this, there is no counterplay. So if you really need it on, that 1 big Sentinel unit or that 1 big Warden unit, you have it. You also don't need to bring a Lord Regent anymore to get it on your Blade Lords, for example. So small upsides and a couple of downsides to that. I kind of wish this was not at the start of the battle round, but that's a discussion that we did in the faction focus. So just to summarize once again with the notes here, so it only targets 1 Venari per battle round. It kind of spoils your game plan a little bit for your opponents. For example, if you put it on your Wardens, your opponent will probably do his best to not interact with those 20 Venari Wardens, for example, because getting 41 crits on 5 attacks in your face with mortal wounds is probably something your opponent doesn't want to see happen. But it is the free thing that you get when you choose the Venari battle formation. More on that in a second, on the second slide here. But keep in mind that if you want to have it every round and something else, you can. So if you go, let's say, a full Venari force and you take the Venari battle formation, you could always choose Shining Company and have Power of Fish for free on top of it as well. On to Deep Thinkers. This was our least favorite ability. Both Siegfried and Ryan kind of agreed with that. I'm not sure whether your opinions on this have changed. We don't need to get into your opinions too much here, but it adds 1 to casting rolls for friendly Scenari units for the rest of the battle round. Now that we've seen all of the Scenari rules, do you rate this ability higher than you did before?
Siegfried?
No, no, not at all. It is. It's not that impactful. I mean, compared with the other facets, it's. I think it's a no choice for me because um, the other abilities are so much so important for us because we needed to survive literally. Both
Yeah.
Shining Company or Enduring as a Rock or Move Like the Wind. It is a movement-esque ability, but in reality, you needed to actually have your Huracan unit survive. And Power of His, on the other hand, can leverage the DPS on a crucial moment. So I think Deep Thinkers is the least useful one, and we don't actually have any strong or lores to depend on
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
and make our strategy revolve around them.
Yeah, I just wish they gave this ability a small nudge, like 1/2 casting and unbinding, or just +1 for all friendly wizards. I understand that it doesn't fit in the keywords concept of this Facet of War thing, but that would have made it much more interesting. Anything you want to add, Ryan, or shall I move on to the other
I mean,
facets?
you've got the gems, right? The endless spell
Yeah,
for +1. You got Techless if you feel like bringing him.
yeah.
You've got the shrine letting a reroll, right? So, and the fact that you can choose this on the fly means if you need to go against an army that's going to be able to turn off your most important spells, you could choose
Hmm.
it in a bench,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think it's fine. It's good to have in your back pocket, but I don't think it's your go-to.
Yeah, especially seeing that, except for one scenario, none of the scenario got, well, Alani and Elthor as well, I guess. So 2 or 3 of the scenario didn't get a 3 of scenario didn't get a Warscroll spell either. So it's just most of our spells aren't that difficult to cast. Protection of Fish is obviously, but yeah, I don't know. It's cool though that it would offset Magical Intervention, for example, because you get -1 from using Magical Intervention, and the +1 would balance it out a little bit. So there is that, as you mentioned. Okay. So yeah, that's basically what I want to say. You get this Facet of War for free if you take the Scenari Battle Formation. I don't know what worlds we would be living in if you ever choose this as a battle formation. I am very keen to see what list you've come up with in a world where you're trying to avoid taking too much Scenari heroes, because then you get more drops, and more drops is bad usually in this game. So I don't know. I can't see you ever bring the battle formation, but that's a conversation for the next slides. Okay. On to my personal favorite one, and I think both of you like this one as well because we're all tactical players here, and it's just so tactically rewarding. Move Like the Wind is an ability that you can only use in your shooting phase. So this is also the only Facet of War that won't reward you for the entire battle round. It will only be useful during your own shooting phase. You pick 3 friendly Huracan units that are not in combat to be the targets, and they can then move their distance up to its distance up to its move characteristic. You cannot move into combat during any part of that move, and it cannot use shoot abilities for the rest of the turn. Now, you might be thrown off by that last part of the phrase here. You cannot use shoot abilities for the rest of the turn. You could still shoot first before you use this ability, right? The core rules don't contradict that, do they?
No.
I'm digitally looking at Ryan for a sec now.
Yeah. No, the whole point is just that you don't get to move and then shoot, like move twice
Yeah.
in a turn. That's the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah. So you could still do all of your shooting abilities, shoot, and then still pop this Move Like the Wind thing. Keep in mind it has the move keyword though, so that's an interesting thing. A couple of notes here. As I said, you can use this after shooting, so you can move, shoot, move. For example, move forwards, use your kind of short range on all the Hurricane units now, shoot, and then move back the same distance. It's also free when you take the Hurricane Battle Formation, which is one that I especially adore. So if you're running Hurricane units, this is an ability that's kind of their bread and butter. They really need this to shine. Seek, you're also a big fan of this one. I think we both chose this battle formation for our list, so we're obviously a little bit, big fans of this one.
Yeah, and for good reason, I think.
Yeah.
It's a part of the index that freed our list building from the bindings of the castle formations.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost a double move from Speed of Fish as well, so you don't have your 28 move Dawn Riders anymore, but you still have your 28-inch wind charges if you want with this ability. So it kind of offsets that spell changing a little bit. I wanted to make some room for conversation if you guys want, because this is the only facet of war that's completely new. All of the other stuff is kind of recognizable for veteran Lumineth players. Is there anything else you guys want to add on top of this comment so far?
No, go for it.
Okay. On to Enduring as Rock then. The Alrith stuff also had to be included in the Facet of War, obviously. So once you select this Facet of War, you subtract 1 from the rend characteristic of weapons used for attacks that target friendly Alrith units for the rest of the battle rounds. So gone are the days where you're ignoring 2 rend, but you are still ignoring 1 rend, but only if you choose this Facet of War. So it's kind of a big nerf, to be honest. There is the amount of rend has been nerfed throughout the game overall, though. At least they promised us that they would. I haven't really checked out as much of the other stuff as you guys have. Would you still think that's a fair assessment? Is it true that all of the armies have lost rends? Or is that not true?
I mean, there are definitely weapons that had -3 that have been turned down to -2.
Yeah.
And I would just say output in general is less. Like just overall per point, I think a lot of units are doing less. They might be less reliant on buffs now. And mortal damage is definitely down. Not that that's what this is talking about, but in a certain sense, because mortal damage is down, then your Alarith guys you're not as worried about. Like that was like a weak point for them, right? So, and I think it all balances out just fine. Ignoring 1 point of rend is totally fine. And remember, can't one of the Cow Mountains turn off a point of rend too?
Yes, I was just going to say Avalenor does have his Rampage on a 2+. He can still turn down another pip of rend. Yeah.
There you go. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
It's quite restrictive, the ability of Avalenor, because you cannot use it when you charged.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other conversation about Alarith and their abilities being not very
flexible,
yes, and contradicting, really. Some of their abilities want you to be aggressive, some other abilities want you to be defensive, so that is a whole different conversation. But I agree with Ryan, most rend has been toned down. My only objection, and that remains to be seen and when we start to have games, is all those anti-something abilities, which may end up, for example, there is much anti-infantry in the game. So there are ways to balance out the loss of rend in certain cases.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so guys, that's the battle traits. Obviously, we lost 8 cores and all that jazz, which makes our army overall much more fragile. But we have gained some wounds. Some of the units have seen their save just improved by 1 because we don't have the 8 cores anymore. A specific god model in our army has seen his save gotten worse by 1. For what reason I can't even know, but I will talk about that when it's the Warscroll time. So yeah, that's the battle traits. Anything else you guys want to add before we move on to the battle formations?
I'm good.
Okay.
Me too.
So battle formations, it's the new sub-factions if you haven't checked out anything 4th edition related. So gone are the days where we pick nations. Now we pick fighting styles, I suppose. And our fighting styles are, compared to other indexes, pretty similar in a way. They are all bound to a specific keyword. For example, the Alrith Temple is bound to the Alrith keyword. The Huracan Temple is bound to the Huracan keyword, and so on. You can imagine where I'm going with this. And each battle formation basically gives you your respective facet of war for free to that keyword. Example, the Alrith battle formation here gives your Enduring as Rock ability, which we just spoke about reducing -1, reducing the rend by 1. gives it for free in addition to another facet of war that you've used. So it's basically on all the time. Now, by on all the time, I mean you get to pick it without actually picking it, but you still have to call it out, because especially in a competitive setting, I can see people saying like, yeah, it's not because it's always on it, you don't have to call it out every time at the start of the turn. So because you don't actually have to activate it. So that might actually be a thing that you have to keep in your mind just when you're playing.
But that goes for all abilities, almost everything in the game, unless it says passive. And even though this says passive, it's referring back to another rule. So it's passive. It's passive that you can choose it, but you have to actively choose it. Now, most people are going to totally know what you mean, and I think most people in even competitive games will be like, "Hey, I've got this as my battle formation. It's always on. I'm not going to like it. It's going to slow down the game if everyone says every single one of these."
Yeah.
But that's generally how all things work in the game now. So it's not just this.
Yeah, the only situation where this is going to be annoying is for the Venari battle formation here. You don't actually get your Shining Company for free, which is weird because in their flavor text, I haven't put it on the screen here, but in their flavor text, it's very clearly referring to the Shining Company. I can pretty quickly read it here for you. So the battle formation for the Venari is called Venari Battle Host, and it says Venari Brilliance. When the warriors in the Venari Battle Host stand together, they radiate a dazzling light that protects them from their foes. That was obviously meant to be Shining Company, but then someone in the actual company, in GW, decided that nope, we're going to do Parafish. So you actually have to call that out because Parafish is a target ability, so you have to target one Venari unit at the start of every battle round. See, anything you wanted to mention here?
It's I think it's really restrictive. I don't, with no good reason, in my opinion at least, because I mean, if it was a Shining Company, most people would probably use this battle formation over the others, but it will let you actually use the facets of war as they should be used. Because the strongest part of the army is the Vanari part. It must be the heart of the army, because even if you want, for example, to go full Huracan, the facet only goes for 3 units. So it's not advisable. So most people will want to have at the heart of the army as Vanari, most of the times. And having Shining Company always on will free you up to choose the other abilities when they suit you best. So that would be the optimum way to use the facets of war, in my opinion.
Yeah, the facets are super cool. I really love the design of it, but it feels a little bit weird that the Venari stuff is not the Shining Company. I think it would have felt completely different if the Shining Company was still on the Warscrolls as an ability, maybe a once per turn ability or something like that. Army, who knows? And you could still use just the stratagems as like some sort of command or something you give to your army, but yeah, it feels weird. It feels like it's being left out on purpose, and I understand why, because as you mentioned, in almost all armies you want Venari, and it feels like it's the best ability to always have on, at least.
Yeah, okay. I mean, if I can throw a little something in here,
please do.
This is context from the rest of the stuff I've read out there. I have to say, as not a main Lumineth player, like this is one of the most interesting collections of rules I've seen thus far. I think the army got way more flavorful in general. I know this is more of a summary thing, but I just want to put this out there for people listening that maybe are seeing all this stuff for the first time. Is, at least from my side of things, anything negative I might say in the next however long we're talking should be taken with a grain of salt relative to that. I think this army is actually really fantastic now. And I think it's got a lot of great flavor going on. And we've spent a lot of time comparing Warscrolls over the past month and a half with what they used to be. I'm now in a mindset of, let's just look at it what it is in the vacuum of 4th edition. And in that context, I actually think Lumineth came out real strong. So I don't want to tell you guys what you should be feeling about it, but if I were to do any pushback about anything, I think these battle traits are still really strong.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't think either of us is arguing for the fact that they're not strong. It just feels a little bit. The fantasy in my head doesn't work as well with the Shining Company thing, feeling like I should pick it almost every turn because I still want to use the other stuff as well. But that's nitpicking, as you say. Maybe I should have started with the conclusion slides before we do all the other stuff, just to get our general opinion about the index out there. But I'm fully with you, Ryan, on the fact that Lumineth feels amazing right now. The list building is so cool. It's a little bit difficult with how the battle profiles are put up here. But other than that, it's all of the units, almost all of the units seem super feasible or very strong even. So I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I'm excited too. And this critique of ours is mostly design commentary, not to belittle the strength or the flexibility of the army. I'm very excited about the index and Lumineth in general in this edition.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, now that we've talked about all of the formations, let's quickly think about how we can actually decide what formation that we want. So for this specific kind of battle formations, you obviously need to consider, as with all battle formations, to be honest, you need to consider what units do you want to affect. And in our case, you might actually go for the thinking of how many units do I actually have that would be affected? What kind of units do I have the most of? And would I want to buff them because I have the most of them? For example, especially for the Aelith Temple, I think this really works. Like if you have a lot of Aelith units, going with the Aelith Temple is probably a wise idea. If you only have two types, for example, Venari and Sinari, it doesn't really matter what you choose because you're going to get the other stratagem anyway. For example, if you have Aelith and Huracan units, you go with either the Aelith Temple or the Huracan Temple, and you get the other stuff as your choice during his battle round anyway. For Venari, that might have actually been a bad example for me writing it down here because Venari have two abilities, but you get the gist. If you have three or more types, passive buffs are usually a safe pick. For example, the Aelith or the Sinari one. Now, I would never recommend picking the Sinari Council, just to be clear about that, if it wasn't before. But as I say, they're not necessarily the best picks. Overall, I think if you're bringing at least two Huracan units, you should probably pick the Huracan Temple. That's my gut feeling right now. What are you guys thinking about that so far? Siegfried, maybe you can kick it off, and then Ryan can add his own thoughts afterwards.
Okay. Well, I agree. I mean, if you want to use the Huracan units, you need the Facet of War. Otherwise, they don't function as they should. It's the most crucial Facet of War in terms of how much it is connected with the units you should be using it with. Other than that, I agree that you will mostly work with two facets in most of your games, and perhaps you can have a single unit as a splash that may be dependent on another facet, but again, not the optimum option. So you can, for example, include a Spirit of the Mountain in a list that is mostly Huracan or Vanari.
Mm-hmm.
But you will have to do so consciously that you will most likely not be using the Aelith Temple facet.
Yeah. Ryan?
No, I think that about sums it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. Before we get into the spells and all that stuff, I wanted to talk about the faction terrain because, this is a super cool thing about Lumineth right now. We, as a lot of armies, we get faction terrain. That's nothing new. But our faction terrain actually gets to move, which is super cool. So let me quickly go over the abilities here, and then we can share our thoughts on it. So the Shrine Luminor, 12 health and a 3-up save, which is pretty good. If there's a Shrine Guardian in it, it gets a bunch of abilities, but let's first look at how you can actually get a Shrine Guardian into your shrine. So in your hero phase, if there is a Lumineth Realm-Lords infantry hero within 3 inches, so not wholly within, you can pick that to be the target, and then you can place it in the shrine. So there's no longer, if I understand this correctly, there's no longer a way to put your Shrine Guardian in during deployments.
Yeah, it seems like a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Just something that you might confuse because it's something that we've always done, but you can't do it now. So you best case scenario, you place it next to the shrine, and then if you take the first turn, it's basically the same thing. But there's no more walking into the shrine either. So that's it's a little bit more restrictive now, which is fine, I guess, because you get a lot of bonuses from it anyway. Exiting the shrine works a little bit in the same way as it did before. So you just say that you're exiting it, and then you deploy your Shrine Guardian wholly within 6 inches of the terrain feature and not in combat. As a general bonus, it works a little bit like it did before. So once per turn, you can use this reaction after you've declared a spell ability for the unit wholly within 12 inches of this terrain feature. While this terrain feature has a Shrine Guardian, you can re-roll the casting roll for that spell. So the change here is it can now also target non-heroes, but there are no longer non-hero casters in our army, so it doesn't really matter. And it actually requires a Shrine Guardian now, whereas before, I think it always worked on a 12, and then with a Shrine Guardian it was 24 inches or something like that.
Question.
Yep.
Question. You had mentioned something like this with KO back when we covered them getting in and out of the boat. But this one actually, rules is written. I don't see any reason why you couldn't enter the shrine on the same turn you exit it.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so I mean, all you have to do is tag it within 3, and then hold it within 6 at the end.
That's disgusting.
I don't know if that's what their intent was. Maybe we'll get an FAQ on that, because that just seems kind of weird. But that would give you some extra movement without counting as having moved.
Yeah. That's pretty cheeky.
Yeah, imagine Light of Eltharion be within 3 inches, get inside, use the inches that is the length of the shrine, and then set up wholly within 6 inches.
Yeah.
And he gets out, so you can actually move Eltharion like 12 inches or something.
Yeah. And you could leave him in there long enough for you to also use your cleansing rituals if you wanted to.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And look, it doesn't say you have to set up outside of enemy units, just outside of combat. Yeah. So I this must be something they're gonna have to FAQ this, because if you put someone in the shrine, let them move 6 inches, and then they're in that nice protection, and then let them step out into like almost combat, and then you can move, and then you can charge. I don't know. Something seems like too much.
Yeah.
But
it's especially enough because you could actually drop the shrine at some point halfway the table, and then just use it to catapult yourself forwards.
I mean, you can't move because you set up out within 6 inches, so that means that you cannot use move abilities, so you can just charge.
Oh, it's a setup. Okay, fair enough. But still outside of 3 is a great setup.
Yeah.
And then even with like what is it, the Wind Mage transporting vortex or whatever it is, you could teleport someone to the shrine, right? Let in your hero phase, let them step in, because there's no order to hero phase stuff. You just do all of your stuff in any order you want, and then your opponent does. Yep. So. There seems like there could be some shenanigans with this right now, but I don't know if that's how that's supposed to work.
Probably not, but here we are. It still gives cover, so before it was a specific rule, now it's just the cover rule, so -1 to hit, I think, or is it +1 save now?
It's -1 to hit, I think. I'll check that while we're talking.
And +1 save.
Okay.
It was Garrison.
It was what?
It was Garrison, so you had the cover.
Yeah.
+1 save and -1 to hit.
Yeah, but we're talking about what it is now.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think it's just -1 to hit, but I'll look it up while you guys are talking.
Yeah. So, okay, let's say that you do decide to stick into the shrine, and if you use your cleansing rituals, just quickly want to point out, cleansing rituals is once per turn, so you could also use it as for magical intervention in your opponent's turn, just to clarify that. And it also doesn't work on unbinds and dispels anymore. That's also a small nerf. But you get this whole slew of other cool stuff in exchange. So this terrain feature can move 6 inches as if it were a unit if it has a Shrine Guardian. The Shrine Guardian itself cannot move, and it sticks into the shrine itself, which makes sense. As before, you measure all of your distances from the shrine itself, so from the terrain feature, not from the base from the Guardian. And that's a pretty cool thing, the second to last bullet point there. All attacks that would target the Shrine Guardian can target this terrain feature instead. So we're going to talk about Altharion in a little bit. He seems super squishy, but if I understand this correctly, Siegfried and Ryan, you could actually have Altharion in there. The Shrine moves just as far as Altharion does anyway. You get 12 extra health on top of him.
Yep.
Yeah.
So maybe it's good to say which units don't count as infantry, because infantry doesn't mean like a 5-wound hero. It means it has the infantry keyword.
Yeah.
So you guys want to quickly list off the guys that don't qualify? Because I think that list is shorter than the list of...
Yeah, it's Lord Regent and Lyrior, and then the big beasts, obviously. And that's it, I think.
Now, Severeth is a monster, so he can't.
Yeah, that falls under big beast for me now because he's a monster. But yeah, you're right, yeah. And no Avalenor, obviously, but... and Teclis, obviously.
Avalenor, Teclis, and the 2 cavalry heroes.
Yeah, that's it.
So that's a lot of good stuff that can go in there, I guess.
Alani and Elithor in a shrine.
Yeah. That's a bit crazy.
Yeah, they would not be able to teleport, though, I think, because I think their teleport has the move keywords. And maybe core as well, I don't know. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, that's the amount of shenanigans you can do with the shrine now is crazy. And as far as I understand it, it doesn't really prohibit you from using your fight abilities and such, right?
No, because it's like you're in the... I mean, it's just an extension of yourself. It's like being inside the sanctum.
Yeah.
And by the way, cover is -1 to hit, by the way.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, and the only downside is when your shrine gets destroyed eventually, and 12 health with a 3-up save is quite impressive in itself. Your Shrine Guardian takes D3 mortal damage, and then you set it up wholly within range of this terrain feature and not in combat. It's actually a get out of jail free card, right? Because if you get attacked in melee, they kill your shrine, and you're like, well, okay, now I deploy outside of combat, and you're free.
Yeah, if you survive, that is.
If you survive the D3 mortal damage.
Survive, because you will. There won't be any other way for the hero to suffer more than the D3 mortal damage that he will suffer when the shrine gets destroyed. So yeah, you will definitely live.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? You charge with this shrine if you can, because I don't think... Well, it doesn't say that you can charge, actually. It says that you can move. You can use move abilities. Is that a charge ability as well, move? I think so. Yeah. So just to clarify here, if I'm following along, because I've kind of skimmed over this because I've been so busy with all the PowerPoint stuff for the other Warscrolls, but correct me if I'm wrong. If Alani and Elithor, for example, turn 3, they deal 5 damage on their attacks. You charge with the shrine, you deal your damage, you take punishment back. Worst case scenario, you take 12 health in damage back. You get a save on a 3-up save, which is better than Declus's save. And if you actually get destroyed, the worst that can happen to you is D3 mortal damage, because you then set them up outside of 3 inches. Within 3 inches, but outside of combat. So you're at least safe for that turn, unless there's more pile-ins that they tag you with, for example.
Yeah, and you can heal and teleport. Because you will have done some damage, right?
Yeah. Man. I'm so excited now.
I'm getting pretty excited.
Zeke and I are like broadly grinning. Ryan's like, this feels wrong.
Yeah, I you know how this works. I just would be conservative about getting your hopes up for it lasting too long.
Yeah.
Some of those things, yes. Some of those things, not. I think, first off, I wanted to talk about the shrine. If you asked me what units I wanted to cover, because I think the shrine's my favorite thing that changed.
Yeah.
And that was before I realized the movement shenanigans, which I think will get FAQ. But I will say one counter point is, as someone who plays KO and has had my boat surrounded enough times to have all my guys die because they can't step out, that does happen.
Yeah.
So especially if you're being aggressive in the shrine and trying to actually move it kind of up the field, if you give them a chance to get around it, there's a way that they'll be able to turn that off. But I still think it's an amazing terrain piece. I think it's one of the coolest terrain pieces. And now that you get to move it and it just doesn't sit on your backfield, that's just so flavorful and cool. And it looks like it should move. It's just to me, it's a win. They just need to clear up some of these movement shenanigans.
Yeah, I think if they would take away the charge abilities and maybe even say that you can't fight, it would still be a perfectly fine terrain piece and super cool as hell.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm pretty unclear about now is it says instead of measuring range and visibility to the Shrine Guard, measure it to this terrain feature instead. So that's like the broad circle of the terrain feature, right? Not the only small base points that it touches on the ground, is it?
I mean, it depends on who you ask, and maybe that'd be good for them to clarify. But like with the woods, usually you don't measure from the branches; you measure from the.
They used to specify on the Warscroll, and I don't actually understand if you can get in combat with this, so you can charge it now. It's actually pretty difficult if you have to measure from the broadest piece, because then it's harder to see whether they're within range.
Yeah, I mean the Ideneth boat is the opposite because the technical little base that's underneath it is not what you measure from. You measure from like the actual boat itself. So I mean, no one would ever argue it's the tiny thing. So GW just needs to get better about defining where something begins and ends if it doesn't have a base.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I got more stoked about this faction terrain piece than I figured I would, but happy to. Shall we move on to spells?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So just enhancements, obviously. So for enhancements, we're covering the heroic traits, the artifacts, and then both spell lords that we get. So the 3 spells from the Lore of Fish that we've already covered in the faction focus. And then the manifestation of Fish, we've covered 2 of the 3 of them already. Let's start with some heroic traits though. So we've got 3: Masterful Tactician, Perfect Strike, and Paragon of Fish. Siegfried, maybe you want to cover these, maybe quickly explain what they do, and then we can talk about them.
Yeah, sure. So the first one is called the Masterful Tactician, and it basically makes you roll minimum for your redeploy command abilities, as long as the said unit is wholly within 12 inches of the hero that gets the trait. So I believe this will be the main pick for most people. It will be the mainstream and the most high skill choice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, reliability in a game of dice is always valuable, and I think this will be most useful for Lumineth players. The second one is the Paragon of His. You get once per battle.
Can we cover the Perfect Strike first, because that's the one that I've highlighted? Okay. Sorry.
Right. No worries. Perfect Strike is the second one. So you can pick an enemy unit in combat once per battle and inflict D3 plus 3 mortal damage on the target. So this is a core and an attack ability and fight. So that means you won't get to use the actual melee profile of the hero. But
you're basically sacrificing your attack for the Perfect Strike.
Yeah, but I believe there is some nice sauce with this heroic trait.
Okay.
Because it lets you go and finish a big monster hero if you opt to go for monster hunting or more shooty build.
Yeah.
Or go and murder a small hero. I mean, in a Lord Regent, for example, who is a fast unit, you can actually have him go and delete a small hero.
Yeah.
On a 3-up, you most of the time, to do 5 mortal damage.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, it's the Paragon of His.
Just quickly want to mention here, because it has a fight keyword. This is actually an ability that replaces one of your activations, right? So if you're activating someone to fight, you can either do his normal melee attacks or the Perfect Strike, but it doesn't happen before fight activations.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, cool. And then Paragon of Fish,
Yeah, this is the weakest one. Is once per battle you can reroll a charge roll, or a casting roll.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, objectively speaking, this we most likely won't be taking
Yeah,
ever.
it's super bad
Um,
for our army.
yeah, it's bad because we have ways to give reroll charge, and we have ways to give a reroll for casting. So it's redundant and once per battle.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's literally no hero that you can give it to in our Lumineth roster that wants to be in combat. Or that is super good in combat or anything like that. The best generic hero that we have in combat is the Lord Regent, and she's really bad in combat. So you would mostly take this for the reroll on the spell ability, I think.
Agreed.
Yeah. Overall, Ryan, as someone who's checked out a lot of the other indexes, how do you feel about these 3 heroic traits?
I mean, in the context of what I said positively about the army, this is my least favorite thing about the like non-Warscrolls part of the army. The command trait or heroic traits list here. I agree that I would take Masterful Tactician for the redeploy more often than not, but considering how restrictive CPs are going to ultimately be and how magic heavy this army is, I think I'd rather save 2 CP for a counter charge than always have one on deck for a redeploy. And I like that it's making it at least a 4, which is good for tactical reasons. But sometimes that 4 is not going to be enough. Also, like how many times you rolled a redeploy that you needed like a 5 or 6? Just to, now, granted, it was in reaction to someone moving. It works different now. It's the end of the phase. But anyway, I still think it's the better one just because it's a static ability. It's not once per battle. I agree with Sieg that a perfect strike could be nice, but Jonas, you just made a perfect argument for what I was saying, or for what I would say is there aren't that many great heroes to throw in there that are going to live.
Yeah.
You know, you can go snipe a wizard, but every time I've tried to like take out some support hero that's 5 wounds, they're usually surrounded by all the stuff I'm not going to get through. Now you've got ways of flying over things. But I don't know. I mean, to me, it sounds like a suicide mission, but maybe that's what you need. I really wish they let you choose all command traits and artifacts, or heroic traits, I should say, based off of after you've seen your opponent's army. Like, then I would be like, cool, maybe there's a type of thing where I need to pick this to go, like, snipe a Scrag Rod or something like that, you know? But if they've got a bunch of big heroes, if Archeon's on the table, I don't give a shit about that one, you know? Like, I don't like any of these that much. So you know, but I just think the army's got so many other great things going for it, and the heroic traits are kind of a little bit meh. But the 3rd edition book wasn't very impressive either. And I do like the artifacts. So you know.
Yeah, I will say, as an argument for Perfect Strike, it used to be in one of our books. I don't think it was in our 3rd edition book, but it was in definitely in our book before that. I actually used that quite a lot on the Lord Regent. Her profile was even worse back then, and it was just, she was quite tanky, so she ended up in combat quite often, but I just wanted to replace her weak ability with this once per battle strong attack. I think it was a little bit different back then, that you could just forgo all of your attacks for D3 mortal wounds, and it wasn't once per battle, something like that. But I actually kind of enjoyed it.
Mortal wounds, I think.
Sorry?
But it was D6 mortal wounds, but you had to be within 1 inch. It was very restrictive.
Yeah.
And it was on a 2-up, I think. On a 2-up, you did D6 mortal damage.
Yeah.
But if my memory doesn't fail me.
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, I think all of them are, they have their uses, but as I have to agree with Ryan here, they don't really get me as enthusiastic as I am about, let's say, the Shrine Luminor, for example. Which is a hard thing to do, to be fair. Onto the artifacts then. All recognizable things. The Phoenix Stone, the Silver Wand, the Waystone, they are cornerstones of our book, or they have been at least for a while, but some have gone through some heavy changes, mostly the Phoenix Stone, to be honest. So this is a passive ability. If this unit would be destroyed before removing it from play, you roll a dice on a 3+. This unit is not destroyed, and any remaining damage points inflicted on it have no effect. Then you heal 1 to this unit, and this unit cannot use this ability again for the rest of the battle. So maybe because it's passive, it doesn't say once per battle, that's probably why, but I find this a very weird artifact. Before we move on to the other ones, it used to be able to target anything but the wearer, which, it was also fine with me, but you could at least then use it on your big piece like Eltharn or Teclis. It was like almost like a fail save just to keep him a little bit alive a little bit longer. Now the units that you can actually give this to, they aren't really that impressive that you want to take your 67% chance of keeping them alive and healthy. And also healing 1 is a nerf compared to the thing, I think it was D3 before. Yeah, overall, if I compare it to the other two, especially compared to the Silver Wand, I'm like, who wrote this and thought this would be good enough compared to the other ones? But since you're super excited about the artifacts, Ryan, maybe you see some use for the Phoenix Stone?
I mean, it's just always like, we don't know what the GHBs are going to say. If all of a sudden it becomes like you need to keep your general alive or else you lose, like, I don't know, the mission for some reason. We don't have grand strats anymore, but, I'm thinking in the context of what it could be.
Mm-hmm.
I think this ability is always nice to have on, because like the game ultimately is only 5 battle rounds. And so even if you've got a squishy hero, there's a chance that there's a 3+ is going to save you the game. So I would never say that this ability is never going to be a good one. Personally, though, I would choose one of the other two.
Yeah.
But I still think a lot of armies would be happy to put that on a hero.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sieg?
Okay, this will be useful if we get a hero in terms of Vampire Lord or Zombie Dragon. So on a hero like this, yes, this will be awesome.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. But if we don't get something like that, I don't think that this is as powerful. On the bright side, is no longer a ward, so you will get to roll it every time.
Oh yeah.
Because these abilities have been FAQ'd to count as a ward. So anything that ignored ward, ignored Phoenix Stone.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I don't feel like with the units that we can currently take it on, I don't feel like it would be too strong to have it go off on a 2+ or even just automatically. Because it's basically saving you from 1 wound. Well, it's negating all of the other damage, I guess. But a 3+ seems a little bit rough compared to what we get as the other two choices. But let's look at those. So the Silver Wand, I mean... This has been in the book, in our book since the first book that we ever got, and it's still mostly the same thing. So if this unit is not a wizard, it has Wizard 1. Otherwise, add 1 to this unit's power level. So allowing you maybe a 1-caster wizard becomes a 2-cast wizard, and so on. But it can now also unbind 2 spells and such, which is nice. Pretty much a staple in all of the Lumineth books that we've ever had, and a very popular choice, I think.
Yeah, and maybe something good to say, because I don't know if we ever corrected ourselves on the channel, but in the meantime, it's been clarified that if you don't have to like reserve one of your spells to unbind a spell if they do magical intervention in your own turn.
You don't?
No, it's been clarified that the unbind is totally separate from your casting. They're not the same pool of things. So if you have unbind 4, you get to unbind 4 even if you cast 4 in the same turn, which of course isn't going to happen. So this is definitely a buff from what it used to be. And yeah, I think it's obviously really cool, especially with unlimited spells. Now you're never and all the endless spells you're going to have access to, whichever set you choose. I think this is a great choice.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
go ahead.
It's been an artifact that was used in many lists since the day of the High Elves and Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah.
It's that old.
Yeah, I love it. We also both picked it for our list, so I mean, it shows how good it is. Then you get the Waystone. It's also something that's been in the book. So once per battle during your movement phase, keep in mind it's a core ability, so you can only use 1 core ability per phase, so no normal moving, for example. Remove this unit from the battlefield and set it up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. You could use this to get out of combat, for example, without counting as a retreat move, which is a nice perk, and you don't take any damage from it either if you would be retreating out of combat this way.
I think this might even let you get out of the shrine, by the way, because it's not a move. The shrine says you can't make a move. So that could be a thing too. I mean, teleporting is always good. Now you don't have to choose whether you're going to have. Well, I guess you don't have a built-in teleport. You've got to take the wind mage for it, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't have a wind mage in your list and you want to have this in your back pocket for someone, it's pretty good. I think we still come to the same question of how much do those heroes need to still be around all of your guys, because they're all pretty squishy, the ones that can take this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like the Alanyas and Eltharians and whatever of the world can't do this. So
Yeah.
I don't know. But like Sieg said, as soon as you guys get like, I don't know, one of the other temples come out and you get like Tyrion stuff, you're probably going to get some big, you know, beat stick of a hero. So that could be cool. Keep in mind, a lot of these indexes are going to last for quite a while, and whatever we see is largely going to probably be imported into the new battle tomes in any case.
Mm-hmm.
So think about this with also respect to, we've got a whole edition cycle ahead of us, not just one year of an edition. We got 3 whole years of this, and plus they don't refresh the editions, at least if we're going off of history thus far. It could be that we stick in this kind of world where the whole system works like this for at least two editions or so. You know what I mean? So this could be really setting the stage for how it feels for a while, and I think this will have some play at some point.
Yeah, I think it's a fine ability, but it just doesn't compare to the Silver Wand value wise. Like my mind thinks Silver Wand, I get to use this every turn, and then Waystone is maybe once at the end of the battle, it's deciding for a battle tactic or something like that, or throughout the battle. But it just doesn't feel as rewarding, I would say. Would you agree with that, Siegfried?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, depend if we get to play some games and see the battle plans, perhaps it may be revealed that it can actually net us some battle tactics or help in certain battle plans, because we have seen that some of these have many objectives. So I mean, yeah, we'll see. But I think both Waystone and Phoenix Stone are for the future.
Yeah,
mostly.
Yeah. Okay. If you guys are good, we can move on to spell lores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So we've got 3 spells here for the Lore of Hysh. We've covered all of them before, so we can quickly go over them because they're also super recognizable from the earlier book. So we get Speed of Hysh here. It's an unlimited spell, still costs on a 5, and it still targets a unit wholly within 18 inches. But instead of doubling up on the move, you only add 4 to the movement characteristic until the start of your next turn. So it would actually go through your opponent's turn as well if you don't take a double turn. To offset that nerve a little bit, you do get to cast it several times with more than 1 wizard. So you can't cast unlimited spells twice with the same wizard, but if you're bringing, let's say, 2 or 3 wizards, each of them could cast this spell once. Now, a 5 to cast, I think if I'm not mistaken, that's 83% chance of getting that off, or 87 maybe?
I'll look it up. Keep going.
Yeah.
I think it's like a 2-up.
Yeah.
If you translate it on a D6, I think it's the equivalent of a 2-up.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, the chance of you getting this off are pretty big, and it's also very necessary for for the way how we operate and how we play. So the fact that you don't have to pick this anymore is massive, I think, because every time that I played Lumineth, if I wasn't sure which spell I wanted to take, I just went with Speed of Hysh. I think if I brought 7 wizards, I had 4 or 5 of them with Speed of Hysh just in case that I needed it to win a battle. So I love that it's unlimited now, and it frees up it feels very OBR-y all of a sudden.
Yeah, I was definitely thinking the same. Obviously, you can't double it up on units. I think you've already probably insinuated that. Siegfried's 100% right. It's literally 30 out of 36, which is literally the same as 5 out of 6.
Okay.
That said, low casting values are also easier to unbind. So, if you do roll just at the 5, then you have to also account for they just need to roll a 6.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. But yes, I do think it's a good one to have.
Yeah. Then we move on to Overwhelming Heats. This spell has gone through some quality of life changes, so it does mostly the same thing, but there are some key differences here. So pick a friendly Lumineth Realm-Lords wizard to cast this spell. and pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches. This used to be wholly within 24 inches, which was way harder to realize, make it way harder to make that happen, because a unit could be stretched out for a very long distance, and thus you would not be able to cast it. But now being within 18 inches is just a nice change, I would say. It still has the movement characteristic until the start of your next turn. So once again, it would run for your opponent's turn as well, obviously, because otherwise it probably wouldn't matter much. And then you roll a dice. If the roll equals or exceeds the target's save characteristic, so it's better against good saves like 2-up or 3-up, inflict D3 mortal damage on it. This seems like a spell that's especially good to double up on with magical intervention. You could potentially tag 2 units, or if you bring a Enlightener, even 3 units, and have 3 units with half movement. Sika, you're a huge... Oh, sorry, was it Ryan?
I was just going to say, the same unit can't be tagged twice, right?
No.
Yeah.
But Seek, you're a massive fan of this ability, right?
Yeah. I mean, before I was like, who thought that wholly within 24 inches was a good idea? I mean, it was a pretty weird design choice. But now it works as it should, I think. And the fact that you can unleash spell with it, that is where the money's at, in my opinion. Because even this is a spell that you will probably want to be casting early in the game, most of the times, or very late in the game. So early in the game, you don't have the reach to give it to your opponents initially. But if you can do it in the opponent's turn, then you can get more value out of it.
Yeah.
Still, a 7 cast is a bit on the high for me, on the high side. But again, it's good.
Yeah.
It's very decent spell.
Yeah, speaking of high casts, it goes up even higher for Protection of Fish. A2 casts, same as before. The key difference being here that its range has increased from wholly within 9 to wholly within 12, which is necessary because Teclis lost his Protection of Teclis, so that did basically the same thing, but it was wholly within 18 inches. So you kind of need that to offset this. Now, this used to be like such a crucial spell together with Total Eclipse and Speed of Fish. They were like massively impactful in certain matchups, especially against mortal wounds slinging armies like the old Zinj or something like that. But there's actually quite a lot of ways to just get wards without this spell now. So you don't actually need it as often as you would before, which is nice because I want my spell slots to use on different things.
And I, before you could lose a battle just because this spell wasn't cast or was unbound, and this was really disheartening at some battle, and I've heard it from many players. I mean, many people, even in the Discord, the Lumineth Discord, were thinking like this: if I don't cast Protection of His successfully in the crucial turns, I'm a goner. So it's nice. It's nice to have alternative options, and it's nice that at last it's 12 inches, because I mean 9 was a nightmare to try and fit everything.
I do feel like the 5-up ward was the main reason why we needed to bring Teclis for so many of our competitive battles, because our army was just so fragile. It still is in some ways even more so than before, but there's just more wards out there now, for us at least.
Yeah. I still think that's good to point out, because maybe not everyone that's watching this of all the rules changes is you don't choose your spells anymore. You just choose this collection of 3 spells, and all of your wizards know it. So if you can kind of like modularly choose these as you need. So you've always got this one in your pocket if you need it. If it doesn't make sense, you don't cast it. If you think you're not going to be able to get it off, then and you'd rather get something else off, go for it. And Also, the fact that it's 12 inches, no, it's not 18, but like Teclis is still on a really big base. So he still is the best one to project this if you have to pick someone to project it.
Yeah.
Right? So, because remember, the base, the way just the geometry works for those at home is the bigger your base, the more impressive the area inside the bubble that it's projecting. So
yeah, great for your Shrine Guardian, for example.
That's also a good one. Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the endless spells or manifestation as they're called now. So for these 3 slides here, guys, I had to split up the index screenshots because for some reason the spellcasting lore is on a different page than the Warscrolls, which I understand from, you know, index sorting kind of thing, but it's a little bit difficult to unravel if you don't put them on the same slide. So the Sanctum of Amentok, for casting value, so super low, you actually target a friendly Lumineth Realm-Lords infantry hero. So once again, that's all the heroes except for Severith, Teclis, Avalenor, and then the 2 regions. And you target it wholly within 12 inches, and it has to be more than 3 inches from all other units and terrain features. And then you do your casting thing, and then you can set up the Sanctum of Amentok around them. So you need the target, set up the Sanctum of Amentok within the target's combat range and visible to the caster and not in combat. A Sanctum of Amentok has 3 parts that must be set up touching each other so that they form a ring with a target inside. That doesn't actually mean that your target has to be slap dab in the middle of it. You could put it in a corner somewhere. It just has to be inside and within 3 inches, but that's always going to be the case if it's inside, obviously. So what do you get for summoning the Sanctum around one of your heroes? Well, first of all, and most impressively, they get a 4-up wards, which is pretty cool. They also add 1 to the power level, so they get an extra spell. If you do the math here, unless you get Unbound, this is basically free in that case. If you summon it around yourself, you use a power level and you gain a power level, so that would be mathematically the same as not having cast it, but you still get the bonus. Instead of measuring the range and visibility from the unit, you measure it now from the manifestation, a little bit like we assume the shrine works. But the manifestation itself cannot be the target of abilities other than the banishment ability. So unlike a lot of manifestations now that you can attack and target with spells and such, this one you can't do that. You just have to banish it on a 7, which is on average still a pretty big chance of you succeeding in doing so. And if the unit that's in the Sanctum would use a move ability, that's also a teleport, for example, or makes a pile-in move, or is removed from battlefield, this manifestation is also removed from play. Interesting thing, I talked about the spell with Agoroth when we met up at Worlds, and he had this super cool idea about the Sanctum. Did you pick that up, Ryan, or because you were also chatting with other people back then, or did you miss it?
I saw what he was talking about in the Discord. I don't know if he said something I hadn't seen in the Discord, but go ahead and explain it.
Yeah, so one of the things that he suggested, and you could do this with a Caligrave, for example, because he would for sure get the Sanctum out. But let's say you have a hero on the front lines and your opponent's closing in with their units to charge it. You could use Magical Intervention to summon the Sanctum around your units before your opponent moves his units closer. You place your unit in the corner the furthest away from your opponent, so usually the back corner, and you shove the Sanctum as far up as you can, and thus projecting a bigger threat range. In your opponent's movement phase, he can't come within 3 inches of the Sanctum because that becomes your new range thingy. But then after he's done moving, you get your redeploy at the end. You redeploy maybe with Masterful Tactician at least 4, but you could do 5 or 6 as well, or lower, of course. And then by redeploying, you move, and thus the Sanctum breaks, and you move, let's say, 4 to 6 inches backwards, depending on whether you use Masterful Tactician. And that makes the charge a whole lot more difficult, because realistically, your opponent had to stay out of 3 inches of the Sanctum. Then you get the distance within the Sanctum, which is more than 3 inches, and then you get at least 4 from the redeploy with Masterful Tactician, thus meaning that you're at least making a 10-inch distance or more between yourself and a small hero, which is a nice little trick. I don't think it'll come up as often, but it's a really cool tactic. So thank you, Agro, for sharing it, and I hope it was okay that we mentioned here in the video.
Yeah, very cool. I like it a lot.
Yeah, cool animation. It's something that you won't get to pull off very often, but when you do, I imagine it's gonna feel amazing. Sieg, do you want to mention something about the Sanctum before we move on?
Well, I'm not a big fan of this manifestation.
Okay.
I think it has some great value. I love the combo of Agaroth. It sounds awesome and really rewarding when you manage to align the situation so that it can happen.
Yeah.
But I just don't like abilities that restrict you from moving. I want my heroes to be on the move constantly when I'm playing the game. So I think I like our manifestation a lot, but I probably won't be using this as much. But as Ryan said, it's always nice to have it up your sleeve in case you need it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I could see this, being cast when you're using, well, I would say Alani and Elithor, but they get a 4-up ward already if they're choosing to cast 2 spells. So there's that. No, okay, let's move on to the second spell, the Rune of Petrification. So 7 casting value, you set it up wholly within 18 inches of the caster and visible, and then you get to use its ability. So it has 6 health, 4-up save and a 6-up ward, and it's a 7+ banishment value. In any hero phase, so both yours and your opponent's, you pick each enemy unit within 6 inches of this manifestation to be the targets. You roll d3, and on a 2+, so that's a roll of a 3 or 4 or higher, you inflict an amount of mortal damage on the target equal to the roll. If a target has 3 mortal damage inflicted to it, so that's on a roll of a 5 or a 6, it has strike last for the rest of the turn. That last phrase is new. It did something else, right? I haven't used the Rune of Petrification a lot, but there was something about movement, halving movement, maybe?
It reduced run, and maybe charge as well.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yeah, -1 to run and charge.
Yeah, there we go.
As long as you were within 6 inches, right? So it almost never... it was almost never relevant.
Yeah. We promised before we started recording we wouldn't talk about previous editions too much. So just thinking about what it is now, do you guys like this spell, Ryan? You've used this rune a lot during Worlds, right? When you played with Teclis?
Yeah. I mean, I like it better now because as I was going to wait until you were done with these, but I was just going to reiterate for those that don't know, you have to pick, we don't have to, but it's free to pick a manifestation lore. So you don't have to pick the Lumineth one. You could pick one of the other ones or Incarnate or whatever, but there's a really good chance you're thinking about taking this one. And I think there's a lot of utility in setting this thing up, especially Lumineth's got a lot of casting and you might not want to put Speed of Hish on everything. So you set this thing up, throw it pretty far up the field, and then just kind of try to ruin someone's day or give them something else they've got to attack or try to banish or get whatever. Like, I don't know. It's in your back pocket. So like Siegfried was saying that I said, we're turning into a feedback loop here. But, but yeah, no, I like all 3 of these actually. I don't know if I'm going to like them better than the ones in the actual official endless spells from the whatever they're called, the GHB ones, but because I think someone leaked them, but I haven't read any of them yet, so I'm just waiting for the official release to come out on Monday. So anyway.
Yeah. I mean, Seek, you can go ahead if you want. I just think this spell is amazing as a magical intervention target, but Seek, maybe you want to cover this first?
Yeah, sure. I think it's much better than before. Because, I mean, you before it was trigger on a 4-up and then on a 4-up and 4-up, and it was really swingy. Now, while it has it cannot spike as much damage-wise as before, it's more you're just roll a 3-up and you're done with it. It's less bookkeeping, it's easier to remember, and the strike last effect can be very impactful. One thing I'm thinking now is if the target has a ward save, and do you have to actually inflict all 3
Yeah, you
of
do.
that damage? So yeah, it may be more difficult for it to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, no, I'm pretty sure inflict and allocate are 2 separate keywords.
Oh yeah, maybe.
Inflict.
Okay.
It even says on a 2+ inflict. So inflict is
Yeah.
and then if it has 3 inflicted, so that's just what you do. It has nothing to do with their interaction.
Yeah, it doesn't say three
Then,
mortal damage allocated. So yeah, you're right. It's probably just on a roll of a 5 or 6 on a d6. You're good.
yeah, so you have 33.3333 chances to actually give strike last on multiple units, not just one. So if you, for example, have 3 units of the opponent, I mean, one of them should get strike last, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that would turn this off is a spell ignore, because that happens in between the declare and effect spell or step. So if you had a spell ignore that said 4-up spell ignore, then this would, after you declared it and it goes off and you get the whole thing or whatever, then they react to the declare, then they spell ignore, and then it wouldn't be inflicted, no matter, because you wouldn't be triggered to roll the die.
Yeah, that's true. Good point. Okay.
Yeah.
On to the last spell then. The Hessian Twin Stones, 5 to cast, which is, pretty fair. You set up the Hessian Twin Stones wholly within 6 inches of the Lumineth Realm-Lords wizard that casts the spell. It has 5 health, 4-up save, 7 banishment value, and also a 6-up wards. Pretty basic ability here, but important in certain situations. You add 1 to the casting rolls for friendly Lumineth Realm-Lord units while they are wholly within 6 inches of this manifestation. Wholly within 6 is kind of rough, gotta be honest there. But it's a nice thing to have, and especially if you look at spells like our Protection of Hish or the Rune as well is also pretty expensive on a 7, and Overwhelming Heat is as well. Having this thing around is a pretty nice bonus. I don't feel like it's as mandatory as some people make it out to be. I actually like the Sanctum more, even though this is obviously more useful in more generic situations. But yeah, it's a little bit boring to me. I really like the way that it worked before, even though +1 is still pretty good. Ryan, how are you feeling about this one?
I mean, it's a small Kairos or a small Teclis,
Yeah,
like
true.
if you don't want to bring those guys. And Sieg, weren't you the one that liked what the Drakesworn Templar used to do with the +1 to cast?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't have that anymore. That's gone. So so you're gonna have to rely on a couple of these in some places if you want to get the extras. And keep in mind, +1 to cast is a lot stronger in this edition than in the previous, because there aren't that many pluses to unbind.
Yeah.
There just aren't that many out there. So I don't know. I think it's, again, this, you don't have to pay any points for it. And if you're like Sieg, you were saying there's some overwhelming heat, you're not going to be within range. So what kind of spells are you going to use all those tons of cast you have to cast? I think this is a great option. Even if it doesn't go off, just have it in your back pocket and put it up there. You're probably going to be castled up a little bit. And yeah, wholly within 6, but remember the base is on like a 40 mil or something.
Yeah.
So that's double the size, almost double the size of what an objective marker is now. Because if it's around 40 mils, then 6 inches is relatively generous. So I don't know. That's pretty cool. So I'm not saying you have to cast it, but remember, we don't have to choose to take these anymore.
True.
And if you're just setting up your turn, why not start that way? Especially if you're outside of unbinding range.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is something that your opponent has to dedicate a power level to if they want to get rid of it at some point. And a 7 isn't guaranteed, even though it's the most likely number that you'll roll.
Yeah. Say your opponent gives you the first turn for whatever reason, and you need to play defensive. So you set this up. You're outside of unbind range. We're all used to it now with dominance.
Yeah.
You set up outside of unbind range. You set this up first. Then you make sure protection's up. I don't know. That sounds like a real great first turn to set yourself up, considering you're probably losing your sentinel shots. You're losing whatever other range you've got.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't hate it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely a good spell. Just less exciting, but definitely valuable. Yeah. Okay. Sieg, do you want to say something about this spell before we move on, or are you good?
Yeah, my only counter argument is that it is static. So once you need to move and go to contest objectives and all that, it may become less relevant. And also, I'm thinking, and that is a generic thought I have, because initially when I saw all the indexes, I was thinking that, whoa, I want this hero too and this hero, and I will probably want to bring 4 heroes.
Yeah.
But after I saw the points, it kind of went the other way. So I'm now thinking I will probably use max 3 heroes. So I'm not sure how many casters you will have in order to how many casts in general will our army have in order to take advantage of it. But again, if you play versus a magic heavy army, I think this will be valuable just to make sure those crucial spells get off. And a great turn one buff to
Yeah.
set up our buffs in the first turn, as Ryan said.
Okay, so I'm going to make a friendly counter argument. The, the game is gotten less. It's gotten more you go I go than what it was before because of the discouragement in losing your battle tactic with taking a double turn. And with that premise, what this means is you can more reliably say, I'm going to dispel this. I'm going to cast it in my own turn. I'm going to dispel my own thing. I'm going to banish it in the opponent's turn. Because like I said, you're not using one of your, like, especially if they don't have enough cast, you're going to be one of the better casting armies in the game in terms of how many casts you have. I mean, not against Zinch maybe, or Seraphon, but against a lot of armies, you'll have more unbinds than you need. Get rid of this thing and set it up again so while you move up the field. If it were less you go I go, where you're going to get doubled a lot, then you wouldn't want to do it, because anyone that knows the rules, if you banish it, you can't set it up again in the same turn you banished it. But I do think there's something to be said about the more streamlined predictability of where the game is going to go moving forward. And I think GW is really leaning into discouraging the double turn as much as they can.
Yeah.
So
Right, agreed.
Okay, let's move on.
Yes. Okay, on to the Warscrolls. So, guys, if you hadn't picked it up yet, we are all choosing 2 Warscrolls that we want to talk about here, as we did with all the Baltome reviews that we did in the past. We're only focusing on these 6 Warscrolls for this video, but in the upcoming week, you're going to get 4 videos that cover all of the Lumineth Warscrolls, and it's going to be more than all of the fantastic content that we've already seen from other YouTubers that have also covered the Warscrolls. We try to give the Stratigoy approach or we tend to use the Stratigoy approach when we're analyzing stuff. So more stats, and we also will work with a rating system when we cover the Warscrolls, but that's for next week. But just know that this is kind of like a little teaser for what's to come. The Warscroll breakdowns in the separate videos are also going to be much more in-depth than these ones, although you will see some similarities in how they're broken down, especially when it comes to the stats. So I opted to go for our 2 named characters, not necessarily because I think they're great, but I do think that they used to be staples in our previous book, and I just wanted to get your opinions on both of them, even though I expect they will be a little bit grim at times. Sieg, you went with the Dawn Riders and the Spirit of the Wind, and Ryan, you opted for the Sentinels. I kind of forced you a little bit to choose that one. And then you either wanted to talk about the Shrine or the Caligrave, and we figured we'd do both. So we've already covered the Shrine, and now we get to cover the Caligrave as well. I love all of you guys' picks. All of those 4 units are super cool to talk about now. Shall we get to the first one?
Yeah.
Eltharion. So Eltharion, still quite pricey at 250 points. He's still a melee blender. You get to see a lot of the things that you got to see before. So he's immune to most modifiers, to be honest. You can modify his attacks, you can modify his saves, you can modify his hits and his wounds and all that stuff. Now, he did lose a lot of his, mortal wounds damage things. He doesn't have his mortal wounds on his shots anymore, and he also doesn't have the incoming damage anymore, which is impacting his tankiness. He also went down 2 wounds, which is quite rough. I wrote here that he's a War Master, but I think you said earlier today, Sieg, that he's not. Can someone quickly check that out?
Yeah. He's not.
Okay, so by War Master, I meant that you can take any units with him. And for some reason, well, if you've seen Ryan's battle profile video, you understand where this is coming from. In my head, I had also made the connection like, if you get to bring any Lumineth units, you're probably a War Master. So I figured he'd be that, and I must have looked wrong. So he's not a War Master, but he can bring all of the Lumineth units, which is pretty nice because the way of how we build Lumineth list is actually quite restrictive. We will get into that in a little bit. So having a character there that can bring any units is quite nice. He's still pretty killy and also tanky. He has his unmodifiable 3-up save, and he has a inbuilt 5-up ward now. Overall, though, I do feel that he's gotten worse, and I'm not sure he's still worth the 250 points, especially if you have Alani and Elthor there. We actually did some calculations here to compare Eltharian's effectiveness when he's targeting, normal units or a hero and a monster. I'm not actually sure whether the math is 100% correct here. I used a website, so I didn't do the Ryan trick where I just have a big brain and I can do the maths myself. So you get to see the Eltharian damage here, still pretty decent. He'll take out a small hero by himself pretty easily, especially if you add the shooting attack damage, which is pretty nice. His shooting attack has actually become a shooting attack now. It's not just an ability anymore. So some people might actually go like, well, I can't target enemy heroes anymore now. That's not necessarily true because his range on his shooting attack also went down from 18 to 12. So once you get to use that 12-inch shot, you're already inside the guarded hero bubble, so you could target heroes. You will get -1 to hit though, still. Overall, still pretty good damage, but if you compare it to Alani and Elthor, which you will see when we cover the Warscroll in the Warscroll breakdown videos, he just gets outclassed starting from turn 3. And I can't really see myself paying 250 points in a format where all of the units are actually already quite expensive for this specific guy, for just being a melee beatstick. Which is nice, but the delivery method of him getting to the units that he wants to go into was always important and always difficult. You at least had the option of doubling his movement. Now you can still add 4 with speed of fish, but that's 2 inches less than before, and sometimes those 2 inches come up pretty big. How are you guys feeling about Eltharian nowadays? Sieg, maybe we can start off with you.
I think he's worse than before, without getting into much detail. I think he just needs the point reduction, mainly. I think his ability are great. The fact that he ignores negative modifiers to hit, to wound, and negative modifiers to characteristics. So no modifier to attacks, to rend.
Super reliable.
Lessen the damage. Yeah, it's very, very great. Very, very reliable. And his ethereal armor is always nice to have. But my main gripe is the fact that the ability he had to have damage made him able to duel big heroes, big fight heroes. Now he cannot do that. And the main problem is the 6 health. If the opponent has a way to do some mortal damage, even with a 5-up ward save he has baked in the Warscroll, it is easy for him to die, I feel. But if you put him on the shrine, then we are talking. Because his damage is nice, as it was. He's a great melee fighter. As I said, my main gripe is 6 health. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Ryan, do you want to hit us with some maths about the 5-up ward? Because usually when we did the faction focuses, you brought up that losing wounds for a ward was usually a fine trade-off.
Remind me. So the only way you got the ward before was if you had protection.
Yeah, there was no ward on him at all.
But he was always four up save unrendable, right? Or was it
3 up save
save?
unrendable and halving damage, but no ward. And now he's 3 up save unrendable still, but 5 up ward now. 2 less wounds.
And 2 less wounds.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the 5 up ward is like, so it's like he has 2 wards.
Yeah.
One of them, of course, only applies to mortal wounds, but the 3 up save that's unrendable, it's really important to note if you're going up against a target, like what's attacking you, has not weighted dice, but has a big damage characteristic like a monster, then and obviously he's good against a monster, especially hero monsters, then if his save, which is unrendable, saves the whole thing, all 6 of the damage, 5 of the damage, whatever it is, none of it goes through. And even if it does, you still get a 5 up ward to shrug a third of it. So, like, I think, like I've said many times, if I'm trying to defend him, but I've also sent you a text message, Jonas, to say that I thought he's kind of unimpressive.
Okay.
So I'm on both sides of this, but if I'm trying to defend him for a second, GW is trying to steer the Warscrolls in a specific direction. And I think with the 2 keywords there for anti-hero, anti-monster, get him up to -3 rend. And the fact that that's the best thing that you could put him into. He's always died to weight of dice, and they gave him another thing to protect him with the ward. I actually think losing 2 wounds is not the end of the world, especially considering he always was rough to weight of dice. That's the only thing that can bring you down like that.
Yep.
So he's functionally 3 up ward, 5 up ward, and that's pretty great. So I just don't know if he's going to get into the monsters you need him to be into. But remember, everyone's got 3-inch range now. So even if you kept him behind your front line and they needed to send their Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon in, then he's right there, ready to fight, you know? So I don't know. I just don't think he's as thrilling as Alani Nelithor, but I think for 250 points, he's not bad.
Yeah, the thing is, I think his Warscroll is actually super good. The fact that he's so reliable is amazing, and the fact that you can put him in a shrine at least as the time of recording and actually charge and fight with him, and thus adding 12 extra wounds to him is amazing. It's just that for 30 points more, you have Alani and Elithor who outclass him going from turn 3 onwards, and then also have all their other shticks. Makes it a little bit bitter of a pill to swallow, but for 220 or something like that, that's a different conversation. So only a 20 or 30 point shift would already shift my opinion on Eltharion pretty massively, because I do think his Warscroll is actually very well written, and as you mentioned, it really feels like GW just clarified, like, he's a magical duelist, a melee duelist, make it happen. And that's it.
Can I throw one last point in there as a little bit of a counter argument?
Yeah.
It's real early, obviously literally week 1 of the edition being official. To say that we know what points he should or should not be might be premature, especially considering we haven't seen how many lists have we honestly written at this point, you know?
Oh, yeah, true, yeah.
So it's not a critique on us. It's just, I think it's a little early to say exactly where someone sits with points. The fact that your brain is saying we should go for lower points because of everything I know about the game, then I think that's totally reasonable. But I think it's also good to say we should be open-minded about, we don't even know what points are like. Like, I've made a couple lists thus far and been like, oh, I've got like 60 points left over, or like 100 points left over, and there's nothing I can put in there because my army doesn't even have something that's cheaper. You know, you can't take allies anymore. You can't take, you can't buy endless spells anymore. There's no way to fill in those extra gaps anymore. So I think the game's just going to feel a whole lot different. And I don't know, like, I don't know what the points value he should be. But I tried to compare him to like Volturnos just now. He's, Volturnos is going to die a lot faster than Eltharion. And they're roughly, Volturnos is like 20 points or so more than him. So I don't know. It's real hard to say. But I do think Alani Elthor is much more interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have a sort of a similar conversation, I think, about Teclis and Selenar, more in the Warscroll breakdown videos next week. But they dropped in points quite heavily. They went from 720, I think, to almost 600. So 590. He's still very magically dominant. He still casts 4 spells on a 10, which was usually the option that you went with. He no longer can choose to do 2 spells on 12 or 1 spell that could not be unbound. He's just 4 on 10 now, but still pretty strong. And he can't do unlimited unbinds anymore, but he got something a little bit different that's sometimes stronger actually. All of his unbinds, you can choose to just have them be count as a value of 8, which is amazing against manifestations, because there is, for banishments it would also work, and there is no manifestation at this point of recording that has a higher banishment value than 8. So he would actually just banish any manifestation that he wanted, or at least up to 4. So that's pretty neat.
I don't know if I'd have to check it, but I don't know if you're allowed to do more than one endless spell per turn banishing. You definitely can't try to banish the same one more than once, but I think every wizard only gets one attempt at one endless spell. But in any case, if it's still good.
Yeah.
And one quick point, you can choose to use his 10 or not.
Yeah,
you can also roll. So if you had like +3 to cast and you had a low casting value, you had no or whatever, and your opponent doesn't have any unbinds left, you can choose not to do the 10 if for some reason you want to modify it for some reason, which was never a thing he could do. So I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, there is one reason why you might now do it, and that's if you throw his one of his spellcasts, his Searing White Light Storm, through the portal. It increases the casting value from 10 to 11, so he would not be able to auto cast it in your opponent's turn, or not in your opponent's turn, and also not through a portal. Well, sorry, it will work in your opponent's turn, but it would not work through a portal in any turn. That's what I'm saying. So you would have to roll for that manually to try and reach that 11. So pretty difficult. I don't think you would ever attempt that because it's a little bit crazy. Now, he got an inbuilt 5-up ward now because he lost his ward spell. That's actually, like almost a status quo. But his save got worse by 1. So he went from a 4-up to a 5-up. And in a world where where Teclis was usually on a 1-up save with Mystic Shield, All Out Defense, and Aether Quartz just to survive 1 round of shooting, and I still lost him half of the time to that round of shooting, I don't see him surviving much. Though I have to say the damage has gone down, and it's super early days, as Ryan said. So maybe it turns out 5-up and 5-up ward is enough. But so far, I'm a little bit iffy on that. He's a War Master, though, so he can bring any Lumineth units, and he's actually a War Master, which in his case is actually a downside, because that means that if there's no other War Master, so if there's no Severeth or Avlenor in your army, you actually have to make him your general, which makes him a priority target from the current GHB, so even worsening the odds, opening battle tactics to killing him, all that stuff. But he's still super good at being the god of magic. His Warscroll is pretty weird. They had to take away a lot of his magical capabilities because it had to fit on one page. And they gave him this rampage that's basically a roar, but you don't want him to be in combat because his damage is just really pathetic. In the Warscroll breakdown slides, I actually did the maths, and versus a 4-up save, both Selenar and his attacks would deal 6 damage, I think. So, yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, Nagash costs like 50% more and also isn't great in combat.
Yeah,
so
5 damage even. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Nagash has that auto slay rampage though, which is a little bit more flavorful, I feel, than the roar ability on Teclis. I just wish it would have been something more, fantastical, like a magical thing or something like that. Would have been cool. Sieg, I mean, we're gonna get your opinion on this one in the Warscroll breakdown videos, because we're getting together for some of those. Ryan, how are you feeling about Teclis? Because you played this guy a bunch during Worlds last year. Not this Worlds, but the year before that.
I mean, he's basically an expensive Gargant. So, like, not in terms of objective control, of course, but, like, for a magic-y whatever, like, his price range makes me want to take him even more, I think.
Really?
Because you don't have to build a whole list around him. Nagash, you have to build a whole list around. Archeon, you still have to.
True.
I'm not saying I like him more than what he did before, but I'm saying in a wider variety of lists, I'd be more willing to take him because I can excuse it with him he just does his role. He just does what he needs to do. And I don't know. I think there could be some other tricks going on here too. But at the time, like, I do get what you mean by him being nerfed. But I'm not saying he's my favorite unit in the book. I'm not saying he's an auto take. But I think if someone was on the fence about, oh, well, he costs like 700 plus points, I just can't justify taking him. Like Alariel, I don't remember what she costs now, but she's more than techless, right? And she's not summoning a unit with her anymore, so she's not getting a free thing. He just went straight up down, and I may be more in line with the value he's supposed to be bringing instead of like being the whole centerpiece of the whole army the whole time. And then if you lost him, like you said, I just played a game with my Warp Lightning Cannons at a tournament a couple months ago where I took out the guy's techless in turn 1, and then it was basically game over. You know? So
I still feel like that might be the case with this version of him, even though he's a lot cheaper. And I definitely understand your point, and I'm super grateful that you tried to be this counterweight to some of the negativity, because obviously Sieg and I are much more emotionally attached to a lot of these Warscrolls. So I love your objective
Sieg never
approach to
liked
it.
techless. Yeah, thank you. But Sieg never liked techless. So
No, Sieg hated.
I can't convince him of anything on this.
Yeah, I mean, quick, Sieg, in a minute, what's your opinion?
He's worse than before. I don't think he's as cheaper as he seems. It's 130 or 140 points, I think, cheaper. It was 740 or 720. I think he's squishier, not that much of a Swiss knife as he was. And I mean, again, it's no secret that I wasn't a big fan of Teklis, but I think that I'm even less of a fan now, games-wise. I think, again, if he were at Croc's points, like 460, he will be a better, more viable choice. Not that he's not viable now, right? But again, I feel since most lists and units are more expensive, if you use tech lists, you will be much very limited in terms of which other units you will be able to include. So I'll stop there and I'll save it for the next video.
Yeah, before writing me off completely, I just want to say, as it is the first week that the indexes are out, we haven't seen how he fares with, depending on what manifestation lore that you're choosing. I think there could be something for the morbid manifestation lore with the purple sun and the shackles and all that stuff, because there's a lot of mortal wounds things out in that thing, and it also hampers movement. So I think there might be some game there. The only risk is he needs to be pretty close now to get value out of all of his stuff, and he's now more fragile and worse in combat than before, so it's a little bit weird in that regard. But yeah, early days, and I do understand, Ryan, your point to the fact that it's now cheaper, so it allows for more flexibility in your list. I do completely agree with you on that. I wonder whether it'll be enough. I hope so.
Even if it doesn't matter, we've got tons of time for the indexes to balance out.
Yeah.
And a point about Croak, I always thought Croak was undercosted for what it's worth. So anyway,
he was.
Keep going.
Agreed.
Okay. Sieg, Dawn Riders, why don't you take this one?
All right. This is the dawn of a new day. The pun is very much intended for Lumineth. This is a wet dream for me. This is everything I wanted. I was so excited when I saw this Warscroll because it made me really sad that perhaps the most beautiful cavalry model unit in the game was a glorified screen, and now the rules actually reflect the lore. This is a very powerful unit. It's extremely fast. It's a 14 inches move, three up save, 3 health. The damage is very decent now, and it's not only useful versus
Infantry. Yeah.
one wounded infantry. Again, it's stronger versus infantry because you get to do some extra mortal damage, but they're great. They're great. I mean, paired with Shining Company, this is a tough as nails unit, as fast as it can get, and hits like a truck, especially if you use Lord Regent in conjunction with it, and perhaps Power of His. The damage these guys can do is exorbitant.
Yeah, let's look
And
at some some mats that you did here. So Dawn Riders on the charge with no buffs against 10 Dawn Riders against a 4-up save. So against any target in this case is 16 damage on average. And then with, did you actually calculate the Deathly Furrows into this one or no?
yes.
Yeah, okay, so it is against infantry in this case.
The first one is not with versus no, Deathly Furrows is nowhere.
Okay, nowhere. Okay, yeah.
None of the none of the
Okay,
charts.
so this might actually go up depending on whether you're hitting infantry. So you're doing on a 3+, you're doing a mortal wound per Dawn Rider. So pretty gnarly in that case as well. But if you put the Venari Lord's Regent buff on him on them to increase their attacks by 1 and have them reroll charges, and then Parafish to have their crits proc on a 5 instead of a 6, and then on a charge they would get an extra rent as well. They're doing a whopping 29, or rounded up 30 wounds, so almost double against a 4-up save. And that's not even the most impressive thing. I feel like the most impressive thing is that it's still 25 damage to a 2-up save as well.
Yes, it's not degrading as the save gets better.
Yeah.
So it's high damage and quality damage.
Yeah.
This is the fast hammer our army needed, and this is this unit makes the army play as it should, because you have a main ability of the army that lets you pick 2 units to fight.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, in order to bring this to bear versus your opponent, you need to take the initiative. You need to be able to get your units on the opponent to actually take advantage of the double activation. I mean, it's useful in defensive way also, but I believe that it is much more powerful and the way it should be used offensively.
I can't
Get there, get your units in, and begin with double activations.
Yeah, I can't count the times that I've had this conversation with you and Ryan and all other Lumineth players that the one thing that I'm missing from our book is shock cavalry. I mean, Ryan, I don't know whether you've, actually remembered those conversations as vividly as I have, but it's been such a missing thing that I always felt like we always said there's a part of the army missing, and it's one of the Tyrion-esque Fenarians because they're not giving us any actual martial style units. And now not only are the Blade Lords and the Wardens still pretty good, but the Dawn Riders finally do what they look like that they should be doing. So I am over the moon as well, Sieg. Very happy to see this.
Yeah, it's as I said, I'm not. I want to hear Ryan's opinion on this, but I'm very excited for them.
Yeah, quite expensive though, but all cavalries. Let me quickly pull up the next slide, and then we can hear Ryan's thoughts, because I think he'll like that next slide. So you also did the calculations for similar cavalry-esque units. I put the points for those units below that, and then you can see that while Dawn Riders are very impressive, and especially for our army are something new, the other armies also actually have things that do similar things, depending on how many buffs that they actually receive. Ryan, you've read a lot of the indexes so far. How are you feeling about the Dawn Riders?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's really great that you've got a hammer unit now. That's like a fast hammer. Um, yeah, the output looks amazing. And 210, we've talked about this before. It's like Blood Knights. You've got Blood Knights now. That's really cool. They're tankier. They've got maybe not the movement shenanigans that Blood Knights have traditionally had, but at the end of the day, like I think it's great to be able to have a target unit to just send off into a corner like that and go do some work. By the way, while we're looking at Morsar Guard, just a little sneak peek. Everyone that followed the faction focus on Ideneth knows that I was down on Ishlian, but I'm not down on Morsar, so I agree with this.
Good.
But anyway, yeah, I think that the real trick is going to just be about the whole point situation. A lot of armies did get some pretty significant points raises.
Yeah.
And so it's just going to be the same argument you can make about Teclis or any of the other units that we were talking about. You said Eltharion going down 30 points or whatever. It's just going to be a matter of can you squeeze these guys in without being like at a weird points value where like I tried, like where you just can't. You're 100 points lower than your opponent, and yes, you get like an extra CP in the first battle round, but that's like not that strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
It
know.
actually happened to me.
Oh yeah,
In my list. Yeah.
nice. Yeah, I mean they're great. I'm really happy that you guys got a fast moving thing, and it seems to be the herald of the Tyrion stuff. Maybe that's
Man,
the thing
I
you're going to
hope
be
that's
doing.
true, Ryan. Oh my
Yeah.
god.
Yeah.
An edition where we get another temple or maybe even Tyrion and Chaos Dwarves, I could die happy.
Jonas, if you're going to collect Chaos Dwarves, will you please promise me we'll have like one weekend where we only play Chaos Dwarves against each other?
Yes, and
then
also with each other. Every doubles tournament, just 2 Chaos Dwarf players.
and just go full Chaos Dwarves to try to make up for lost time.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
We grow our beards longer than normal. And we just go full on cosplay.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Sentinels. I kind of broke this up with one of your units, Ryan. Well, it wasn't actually your choice, but maybe you might have chosen them if I hadn't pushed you. I don't know. But I asked you to do some maths on these guys as well. Would you mind covering them, or shall I cover the generic stuff?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
So, Sentinels have changed, and that's okay because a lot of our you could look at shooting units in the game as being either your kind of massed shooting units that have weight of dice and a lot of stuff going on, or you're kind of like snipe targets. And I don't think Sentinels ever should have been a snipe unit. I think they should have been a massed weight of dice kind of, but good quality weight of dice, but whatever. And I think that they've lined up a little bit more that way. So we're talking about 10 models for 150. By the way, the leader is no longer a wizard, which means that you actually get 2 extra attacks because it used to be nine attacks if you weren't in Helon, and then he ate up one of your guys, and now he gets +1 from being a champion. So you're going up to 11, which actually makes a little bit of a difference. The range is shorter, and that's going to be a real problem. You do kind of still have the option to increase the range, like you said here, but at -1 to hit. And that was always basically what it was, but the range can't get any bigger than that. But that's okay because range has been pulled back on shooting a bit as well.
Yeah, and it's a little bit better because you also had to drop your rent for that range to kick in, and now you still retain a rent.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're not casting Power of Hish on each other, on themselves anymore, but so they're not doing mortal wounds. They're doing auto wound, which I'm going to make a Math Hammer video about it eventually. But basically, if it's dependent on how bad your ward roll or your to wound roll is, and they've got a right in the middle, 4 up to wound, which is totally fine. So anyway, would you like to move on to maybe the stats real quick?
Yeah, so I put the first a comparison with the ballista, and then I have a different stat for their average damage output as well.
Sure. So this is just Jonas asked me to do one of my graphs about waiting for how much value they bring per 100 points worth of Sentinels. I find that to be the most fair way to compare units. But then there's, of course, other things that you can't compare because like the ballista, which we don't, of course, have on screen, but has longer range and has a slightly different profile, So it has a better thing against certain targets. But for the most part, we're going to see here on the blue, the left hand, the first 2 per save value on the left are going to be your Sentinels, and the rightmost in every column there is your ballista, right? Now I said let's take the not like all out attack sentinels, and let's use them at their base profile. I think I did even long range at this. And even when they're at their worst profile and the ballista's at its best, where it gets to rend against monsters, and then it gets power of hish. And by the way, you should never blow your power of hish on a ballista. You should always use one something with weight of dice.
Pro tip.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's just stupid. But unless it's only a model you got left or something. But you see that against a 2-up save, everything starts to level off a little bit. But for the most part, you can look at those expected value averages there. There's no version of that's where we collect all 5 of the save values and balance them equally. There's no version of the ballista per its respective, or even against another version of the sentinels that's better per 100 points. And remember, the ballista is also not having adding bodies to an objective like the sentinels are going to be able to.
Yeah, and you're gonna have to pick several, so filling up a regiment more easily, thus needing to bring in another regiment. I mean,
lots of reasons.
Yeah, there is one Warscroll in our entire index that I feel is just something that I will never take as it is right now, and that's the ballista. That's the only Warscroll.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're going monster hunting, maybe, but like even then, I mean, I don't know if it's worth it.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of like what it is. You want to go on to the next graph?
Yeah, and I'm happy that you said monster hunting, because that's going to be a perfect segue for our next unit as well. So this is a comparison that Sieg did for somewhat likely pointed ranged units. Yeah, I think this tells a pretty clear story. So yeah, I mean, I don't have anything else to add to that. It's not good. Unless you really need the 30-inch range, or the 36 even, if you have some sentinels nearby, I don't see us bringing ballistas. Okay, anything else you want to say about the sentinels, Ryan, or shall we move on to the next scroll?
I'm good. Let's go.
Okay, so you talked about monster hunting, and Siegfried, you have a plan of using the Spirits of the Wind for that one. So the Spirits of the Wind, they went through some changes, but they still do some things that they used to do. They're still somewhat of a ballista, a mobile ballista, I suppose. For 240 points, you get a Warscroll with 8 wounds and a 4-up save and 5 wards. That does D3 damage, but does flat out 3 damage to monsters, and it also buffs wind chargers. Now, Sieg, I'm gonna quickly move to the next slide already, just so you can tell us why you're so hyped about this Warscroll.
Yeah, I mean, this is the epitome of monster hunting, right? The Spirit of the Wind, if you just see its shooting stats without it fighting and shooting at a monster, it's not very impressive, really. But if it fights a monster, it gets 3 damage instead of D3 and +1 rend. So the damage is equal to that of Seperate. With only 2/3 of the points, really, paying. And it has the same abilities as Seperate, the passive Spirit of the Wind, which lets Hurricane units hold within 12 inches, be able to shoot and or charge if they run or retreat, and all that shenanigans. And I mean, the rampage is cute, but not that great.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you wish to control the battlefield and also be able to go monster hunting, this is the unit you want. And if we move to the next
Yep.
the next slide, in which we'll see a combination of Seperate +2 foxes or 3 foxes versus a monster, you will see that they can one-shot a monster. And this is also a place where the perfect strike comes into play. So let's say you have a particularly tough monster that this damage won't be enough. Then you can send your hero with perfect strike and finish the job, really. So this has gotten me excited personally, and you get all the Huracan units movement shenanigans, but you also get some solid monster hunting, and I believe I may be proven wrong that almost every army that can bring a centerpiece monster will do so. I mean, most of them have recursion abilities or essential abilities like the delusions of Asheran, and I mean, I believe there will be monsters, not as prominent and as in some other eras, but most lists will most likely contain one uh, crucial monster hero.
Yeah, and that's not mentioning the fact that just a lot of things became monsters. Like Seperate is now a monster, Lady of Vine's a monster. All the KO ships, well, the two big KO ships are monsters as well, right, Ryan?
Don't know about that. I'll take a look.
Yeah, I think we covered that in the faction folks. I don't remember for sure, but I've just noticed that throughout the books, these creatures that weren't monsters but usually looked like them have now become monsters. So the fact that a monster is usually on a 3-up save at best, and you're doing on average 16.67 wounds with the 3 foxes is pretty nice. Now I have to say, Sieg, even though I love your second wet dream here as well, it is 830 points. If you add your other wet dreams of Dawn Riders to that, maybe even twice, like 20 Dawn Riders, you have already spent 1,600 points of your 2,000 point list.
I mean, we get there when we go to the list, right?
Yeah. Now, I have to say, though, we're looking at the damage here, but 3 foxes will absolutely dominate for battle tactics as well. Keep in mind, like with move like the wind, you get to move these things twice. They move 18 inches, so 36 inches per turn for every single one of those foxes. And that's not even counting buffs like speed of vision and such. So lots of flexibility there. Quite fragile, though, the normal foxes, compared to Seperate especially.
Yeah. I mean, they can be targeted, right?
Yeah.
But if you have both Seperate and Foxes, the enemy will still have something to shoot. So I think it's not that bad if you manage to bring 3. If you don't want to pay the 830, you can bring a more light version of the combo.
760 becomes something like that then, or 780. Yeah. Okay. The last unit was actually willingly chosen by Ryan. I didn't force him to pick the Caligrave, but I'm so happy that he did, because I'm also very excited about a Caligrave. Ryan, are you ready to cover this one as well, or shall I take the general approach to it first?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, go for it.
Well, real quick, there's no the KO boats aren't monsters, but I do remember some conversation we had, so it's probably some kind of rule interaction that we saw somewhere.
Maybe, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, the Caligrave I actually feel emotionally connected to, because my very first Math Hammer video I did for the channel was
that's true.
where I did a breakdown of why Erasure sucks, and which was the Caligrave spell, and then it got better with the new Battle Tome, to be fair. And I wanted to do to pay my respects to the Caligrave. I wanted to update that video, but I never got around to it. So now I can kind of make it up to my buddy here, who's floating around walking on weird stick shoes. The Caligrave, the main reason I think he's awesome is because he's the only thing that's basically got deep thinkers anymore in the traditional way of doing it. But he just gets to auto cast whenever he tries to do an endless spell. It gets cast on the 8, which means every endless spell I've seen, it gets cast immediately as long as they don't unbind it. Yeah. Which means if you need to put an endless spell out there, this is your boy. And there's a lot of good endless spells. Like remember, that doesn't have to be the Lumineth ones. It could be any of the neutral ones. And so that ability alone is just such a cool functional upgrade for what this guy can be. Because if you need to put it out on the backfield away, especially if it's out of unbind range, like say putting the gems up or something, it's there you go. You have it. You mentioned him when talking about the Sanctum. It's really great. And like you said, shenanigans with magical intervention. Oops, there's my thing, and it doesn't even get modified, right?
Yep.
So Like, it's just amazing. I think it's a really cool unit, and you need wizards anyway. So, and you get the endless spells anyway. So why not consider this guy as one of your dudes? Bring some Blade Lords, protect him, whatever you want to do. I'm a fan. I think it's got a lot of utility, and 150 points, like, that might seem a little pricey, but like, there's a lot of wizards that cost that now. So I think it's totally something you should keep as an option in your list building.
Yeah, definitely agree. I love this guy. For 30 points more, you have the 2 Cast Enlightener with a pretty nice Warscroll spell, though. But yeah, the guaranteed summoning of manifestations is pretty stellar. I mean, an Incarnate is actually quite difficult to summon and is hard to kill as well. And you would just auto-summon this every single turn with a Caligrave. So they would need to, unless they unbind it, obviously, but they would need to kill an Incarnate every turn.
Yeah, amazing. I haven't seen the Warscrolls for those things, so I don't know, but I'll take your word.
Yeah. I did, and they're actually they're quite impressive. I think you would want to use this on the Purple Sun maybe, or the Incarnate, or the Gnashing Jaws. All very good targets for this one.
Amazing. Yeah. Cool. Siegfried, what do you think?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I think he's great. He's my favorite scenario hero after the twins.
Same.
And he brings stability. Again, in a game of dice, knowing that you will cast that manifestation on an 8 is great. And what we should be mindful is that I think he cannot use it. You can have 2 of them and use it 2 times. I think it's once per turn. So I think you can spam him in order to get multiple. Okay, it's once per turn per army, right? So you cannot use multiple Caligraves in order to cast many manifestations on an 8. So it's just the one. Still, he's a valuable asset, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that the redundancy thing has been trimmed down for almost every like big ability in the game. So like, to me, that feels commensurate with the rest of what the game's doing. But
yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah, agreed. As it should.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it for the Warscroll so far. As we mentioned before multiple times now, you can expect next week, you can expect 4 videos where we go more in depth about the Warscroll. We actually show the Warscrolls as well. And then we break them down, we look at the pros and cons, and we usually add stats to it as well, like calculation and such. But we also made 2 lists, but before we could get into the actual lists, we had to build them. And Ryan, you put out an amazing video on the Baal profiles yesterday, I think. Well, at the time of recording, it's yesterday.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to quickly take us through here. So just to show an example, this is how the Baal profiles look now. But it's kind of complicated when you see it here to take in. But basically, you pick a unit to lead a regiment, and then a hero to lead your regiment. And then that hero allows you to bring certain kinds of units. For example, the Ellard Stone Mage here allows you to bring 0 to 1 Israel and Riverblades, any Vanari Wardens, and any Elrith units. Now, Ryan, you made a summary of what the battle profiles would mean for Lumineth. It's actually much more complicated than certain armies. Maybe you want to take us through these bullet points?
Yeah, so if we use the same terminology I did in the video, an unlimited unit, you guys can take wardens. Every single one of the heroes can take wardens, so you don't have to worry about whether your wardens will fit in somewhere. Your 1 Italics hero, which is the kind of hero that can be taken by another hero, is your Banner Blade, and can be taken by as 0 to 1, as they always are, by Teclis, Alanian Elthor, Lyrior, Eltharion, and the Lord Regent. Basically, all the named non-temple heroes plus the Lord Regent, and so not a Valinor and Severeth of the kind of big guys. The War Master types, again, not literally War Masters, but the kinds that can take all units, are Teclis, Alanian Elthor, and Eltharion. And they, of course, can take the 0 to 1 Banner Blade as well. The restricted unit that you can only take 0 to 1 of is the Idrillon River Blades, which can be taken by the Stone Mage, the Wind Mage, all 4 Scenari, and the Lord Regent, evidently not limited for War Master types. Meaning, I didn't cover this in the video, that you could take with, say, I don't know, Alani and Elithor, you could take 3 River Blades if you wanted. Not reinforcing them, of course, but you could take them because that unit can't be reinforced. The heroes that are any Venari would be Lyrior, Lord Regent, and Bannerblade. Of course, anyone that was a War Master type could have also taken those Venari units. Any Alarith would be the Stone Mage of Volnor, and Lyrior, which is interesting because he used to be part of Emetrica, and that's kind of his reference to that. Any Huracan would be the Wind Mage and Severeth. And then Blade Lords can all specifically be taken as named units here by the 4 Scenari heroes. And that's it. That's how it works.
Yeah. Quick, in a minute or two, can you make a quick comparison as in how restrictive this is compared to the most of the other armies that you've seen so far?
It's complicated, but not necessarily restrictive. I mean, I've seen people already complaining about the way these work. I still think the new system, once you get your head wrapped around it, is more flexible. And I think we're actually going to see some people having to take more drops than we're used to. So if you're comparing it to the old way of dropping, I think that's a little premature, but let's see. But at the same time, I mean, a lot of the units you want to be bringing are going to be able to bring the units you want to bring, right? So like, I don't know. In general, I feel like you're going to be able to get a lot of stuff in, and it's to Siegfried's point about how many heroes you're bringing. That's where you're going to start to feel the pinch a little bit. If I was going to go with only Scenari heroes, and not including the named ones or the twins, but if I was going to go with only Scenari heroes, then you only can choose between River Blades, Wardens, and then Blade Lords, and then that's it. So if that's your idea of a list, I do understand why you're going to feel more pinched there. And then you'd have to take aux units. But I don't think it's all that bad to be like, hey, it'd be fun to take. It's encouraging me to take the twins, or it's encouraging me to take one of the quote unquote War Master types.
Yeah.
Unless you get that in there, or taking a Lord Regent to expand your options a little bit. And then you have to kind of pick and choose a little bit more. And again, as we've said many times, I think this edition is really trying to encourage more varied lists in general, so that you have kind of like your regiment feels like it's the part from this segment of your army, and then it wants to go over here and kind of do that. And this other one wants to do something else. So especially considering what you said at the beginning about the different types of formations based off of the facets of war, that maybe you don't want to go full on just one of the 2 temples because Huracan can only pick 3 units, right? So maybe you want to do a Huracan and Venari build, and then you already have your heroes kind of sorted out anyway.
Yeah.
So that's my thought. But compared to the other ones, I don't think it's rough. I just think it's more complicated.
Yeah, I like it a lot. It's super cool. It's flavorful, and I don't know whether I will still like it at the end of the edition, because by then you're usually sick of certain things that force you to play a game in a specific way. But I like it that it's something new. It's a different approach. The only thing that I would love to have seen differently is that all of the small Scenari heroes should be paragons. That's something that I do feel like it's missing. Or Alani and Elithor and Eltharion should be War Masters.
But sure, you should see what they did to Stormcast though, because they're gonna have a real hard time fitting everything into with all the heroes they want to take.
Yeah, because Stormcast is just like our last popular build, which was the Centoi build, are such a hero-centric army, right? I mean, you get punished so hard for those lists.
Yeah, I mean, you only have the Banner Blade, but Stormcast only has 2 heroes that you can take as your Alex heroes, and they've got so many. It's real rough. Yeah. So anyway.
Okay, let's look at some lists. Sieg, I've put your list up first. It's fascinating to me how little work it took for me to write this down. It was so easy. Layout-wise as well. There's just not much to write anymore because you don't have to select spells and all that kind of jazz. So I put it all up there. Why don't you take us through it, Siegfried?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you don't have to brainstorm to assign the spells, it's heaven in list building, for me at least. So the idea was to put my favorite things in a list because, again, this will be for the first game we play, so I have no idea how actually powerful and this list is, but these are the things I want to test. These are the things I like, so I try to make something with them. I got the problem that Ryan mentioned. So initially this was a separate plus 2 Spirits of the Wind, and then I got to a point that I was 1,900 points, and I was like, oh, I don't want to miss 100 points, right? And I don't have anything to use because I can't have allies, and the cheapest unit we have is Cathalar, which is 120 points. So I opted to put Wind Chargers, which is not by any means a bad choice, especially the fact that those are 30 wounds as opposed to the 8 wounds of Spirit of the Wind. So the idea is Severeth's gang will hunt monsters and heroes and go for the tactics, and the Lord Regent's gang will go for the kill. So it's simple, and I believe that it surely has its weaknesses. I can't be everywhere, but I think it's a solid list, and I wanted to move away from castle builds by any means necessary. So this is what came out. As for the spells, I opted for the Lord of His, which is a standard great choice, and you need the protection of His for the Lord Regent and the Dawn Riders, right? And the manifestation of His I chose mainly because I plan mostly to just use the Rune of Petrification and fish for those 5-ups to grant Strike Last on enemy units. And it's a 2-drop list, which is nice.
Yeah. Man, there's so little models in here.
Yeah. And of course, you will always use this is a Huracan Temple, and 90% of the time I will use the Shining Company, and sometimes the Power of His for the turn the magic charge happens.
Yeah, this is such an obvious list where you would have wished that Shining Company was your static buff, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it looks interesting, Seek. I have no idea where this will work. I mean, if I compare to third edition lists, it just seems like so few tools to work with. But then all of your tools are high quality, though. The only thing that I'm super skeptical about is the Lord Regent, but we'll get to that when we do the Warscroll breakdowns. But I don't believe she's actually worth the investment. But you needed a spellcaster, so I understand where you're coming from. Ryan, I actually suggested that you not make a list and just pick apart our lists or complement them as well, obviously. What do you feel about this list?
Again, I haven't played a game yet. I'm playing my first one tomorrow. So first, the question about the General's Regiment, the hot topic. Did you think about maybe not putting anything in there or taking a tankier hero? Then I guess Severeth can just stay out of the fray. But if they have a way to shoot him for some reason, is that possible? I don't remember what his rule is. Does he have the not visible?
Yeah, go ahead, see.
He cannot be shot if the enemy unit is not within 9 inches.
Okay, but what about the other Spirit of the Wind? He doesn't have that rule, right? So if you pick the battle tactic to kill something in the General's Regiment, do you feel like that anything in there is a little too soft?
Yeah, initially, the General will be the Lord Regent. But I saw the video you posted, and I discovered, as you were mentioning, the War Masters, that Severeth was a War Master, so the plan changed abruptly.
Yeah.
So I mean, you helped the person for sure with the video.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I personally like this list a lot because I love elite armies that like get in there, do what they need to do. They're fast. There isn't anything slow in this list, It's interesting. I mean, it's shocking that you only have one wizard, right? I mean, obviously in the old version of the game, you would have had the Dawn Riders as wizards too. But again, this kind of goes to the point, like, I don't know if all the lists need to be wizard lists, you know? Like, I think you can probably get along. Those Dawn Riders put a lot of work out. The Seperate and the Spirit do a lot, plus the Wind Chargers, and there's so many movement shenanigans. I don't know. I think this definitely could catch some people off guard, for sure.
Yeah, and it's scary, right? Seeing 30 cavalry models, that's hard to chew through.
Yeah. Especially with 3 wounds apiece, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, because only 33 models, but 115 wounds still.
Sieg, what
it's more wounds than my old lists.
Yeah.
Sure. Sieg, what would you choose for your honor guard situation? Did you tell us that already?
No.
No. Priority target most likely for wind chargers.
Yeah.
That is my most frequent choice. That will be my most frequent choice, I think. But again, I'm not sure. I need to have some games behind me.
Yeah.
I think this is very uncharted lands.
Yeah. And to that point, I mean, wind charger is such an excellent target for priority target. Well, an excellent choice for priority target because their shots ignore wards. So usually, worst case scenario, you're at least hunting a general, maybe nothing in his regiment, but yeah, that's I think that makes them much more viable damage-wise because the damage is kind of pathetic if they're not buffed. But with some buffs there on +1 to hit and +1 to wound and ignoring wards, that can be pretty juicy, actually. That's 31 shots coming from those 10 wind chargers. Wounding on 2s, hitting on 2s, wounding on 3s, -1 rend, ignoring wards.
Yeah, so picking a priority... So sorry, go for it.
And you can also all-out attack them if you want to kill a general that will have the new lookout chair. Yes, guard hero. So you can still hit on 2s.
Yeah. Ryan, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say, you could, if you picked your priority target to be a general with a really good ward save or whatever, that's a perfect target to put it on, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so interesting lists, Sieg. I made my list before I saw yours, and it was so alike yours. I mean, I didn't have the Lord Regent and 20 Dawn Riders, but I still had the 10 Dawn Riders, and then Severeth as a general, and then Wind Chargers and such. So I kind of I switched things around when you delivered your final list, and I went with something a little bit differently, but there's still a lot of overlap. So I ended up dropping Teclis, sadly. And, I'm giving away a free battle tactic to my opponent because he just has to kill any of these units to get the Slay the Entourage battle tactic. But hey, here we are. I called the list so long War on Tax because this is the first time that I could take Sentinels and Dawn Riders without bringing Wardens. So, yay! I also opted for the Battle Formation Hurricane Temple. Again, if I could go for Shining Company, I would have, because the Sentinels and the Dawn Riders and the Blade Lords would love that, but it's going to be the Hurricane Temple. And I went with the Lore of Fish and then the Morbid Conjuration. And the Morbid Conjuration I chose because the Caligrave can auto-cast the Purple Sun. And Purple Sun with Sentinel, Spirit of the Wind, and Wind Charge is going to be really nasty. Especially with River Blades doing 20 shots from their darts or whatever it's called. It's going to be tasty. Then you've got the Shackles and the Gravetide that can slow your opponent down. So I actually have a lot of range damage in here as well. Because a lot of my units are quite fragile, I opted for the Masterful Tactician on the Caligrave to get that easier redeploy, but I could just as well have gone for something different. I'm not too bothered about that one. And I did choose to go for the Silver Wand as well, just to get some more spells, because initially I didn't have the Caligrave in here, and it was Severeth and Elania, and I was like, at best I have 2 casts. That just feels wrong. And I could also not give a trait and an artifact because I only had 2 named heroes. So I'm in this weird zone where I'm not sure whether it's more important to have fewer drops or fill a 3rd regiment just so my general's regiment is empty. I don't know it. I don't know that yet. So it's too soon to tell, obviously. But it allowed me dropping Seperate allowed me to bring River Blades, and so I still have Spirit of the Wind, 5 wind charges, and River Blades to complete all the movement-based tactics. Sentinels at 24 inches, combined with a Spirit of the Wind, and maybe even teleports from the River Blades will do some work damage-wise. And Elani and Elithor in the shrine with some Blade Lords giving them a 5-up ward. The Blade Lords, I mean, that's pretty nice. And then you've got the Dawnriders that can just go solo, because I don't feel like neither the Sentinels nor the Blade Lords actually really need Power of Fish to be effective. And I do feel like Dawnriders would benefit greatly from Power of Fish, especially on a charge, and then proccing 2 mortal damage per 5-up to hit is pretty juicy. So this is my idea of a list, and this is the list that I'm probably playing against you at least once, Ryan. But I don't have River Blades, so it depends on whether you're okay with me proxying 10 River Blades with something else.
Of course. It's either not 10 Sentinels, like the points say 300. Are you sure the points are right here, or the numbers are right here?
Yeah.
I mean, 10 Sentinels is not 300 points.
Yeah.
It's 20 Oh, right. It's 20 Sentinels, obviously. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 20 Sentinels. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I mean, I do think, like, it's just theory crafting, but the same question about the General's Regiment stuff, things being easy to take out. The Dawn Riders not, the Spirit of Wind not, the Wind Chargers probably can stay out of the way, Alani and Elithor probably, but the Sentinels might be harder to protect.
Yeah.
The interesting thing that's been playing with my, list building since I've barely touched the idea is how big are screens now? Like, it seems like it's a lot harder to afford true screens, and like that's been such a part of our list building for 3rd edition is making sure you have some cheap stuff out there. But I wouldn't describe any of this as truly cheap screens, like.
Yeah, we have no screens anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Wardens, but
140 points is they're not cheap, and with half an inch of coherency, how much space will they cover? That's I think mainly cavalry units will be good for screening, or units with horde units with many models, which again they will be able to cover some distance and give coverage.
My idea here was I'm actually not afraid of putting Elani and Elithor kind of in front there with a shrine as a partial screen, and then the Blade Lords being within combat range of them would give the Blade Lords a 4-up save and then a 5-up ward from being bodyguard units. So that actually makes them quite tanky with Shining Company on them as well. If you choose Shining Company, your Dawnriders become excellent screens as well, 3-up save and -1 to hit. And then I wouldn't be afraid to sacrifice the wind charge at all if I need to. I know we'll have to see. I like it because it's all of the units that I love from the new edition. And from the new index. So I'm just gonna play everything that I like, and I kind of feel happy that it still seems like a list that could work, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I have no clue. So I think all these units have tactical things. The River Blades, I love the teleport. I almost wanted to talk about myself. The only thing that held me back was because they have to be within 6 inches of the board edge, and even though that's good, sometimes it's more restrictive than I usually go for in a teleporty unit.
Yeah, but well, spoiler for the Scenari video that we're gonna put out next week. But the best thing about River Blades, Ryan, is actually their move that they can do in combat. They get to move 2d6 inches in combat, so you in any combat phase. So you do have to do it before you fight, and you have to end up in combat. But that actually means that you could, for example, run and not charge, and then use that combat move to charge, or fail your charge and have that basically a free reroll with that combat move, walk into your opponent's units with a charge roll, then jump 2d6 to a different unit or to a hero and then attack them because they have anti-hero on their blade. So there's so many shenanigans that these river blades have. It's a really stunning unit, I think.
Yeah.
You got the right base sizes for those, the Warcry bases?
I might not actually.
I can bring some.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that would be nice. Thank you.
Yeah, it's super cool. That's a neat trick. I didn't pick up on that. I just read combat and I thought they have to be in combat, but no, they don't.
Yeah, so Seek and I did as well. And we had this whole thing that we had to re-record that part because it was just, I thought it was like they had to be in combat and they might jump over a unit or something, but it's much more than that. So yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah, cool.
Because that also means, right, that if you teleport them and obviously you can move afterwards, you can still attempt to charge. And if that fails, you could, use your combat move to do that charge again or make that charge and then move after your teleport to get that combat move in.
Yeah, amazing. And if it's your opponent's turn, because the sequence of using combat phase ability, you use it before they get to use their combat phase ability.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you don't have to stay in combat with the unit you were in combat with initially. You just have to be in a combat. So you could fully move out of the combat that you don't want to be in.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So many possibilities.
Yeah, it's a beautiful unit too.
It really is. I really want to buy it, but it's not really easy to get your hands on Warcry warbands right now, especially the ones that have good Warscrolls. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I bought the unit.
You haven't, or you have?
I have the unit.
Okay.
Not painted, but
yeah, I might actually have the bases from my Seraphon, Ryan, but it feels weird playing this Seraphon. But if you're okay with it, we'll make it work in some shape or form. Sure. Yeah. Anything else you want to mention about my list, guys, or shall we move on to our concluding thoughts?
Let's move on.
Okay.
I like it.
Yeah. So, as a conclusion here, maybe Sieg, you can take the internal balance, and Ryan, if you feel confident enough so far, a general thought about external balance would be nice.
Sure.
Okay, Sieg, take us away with the internal balance, maybe.
Okay. I think we're certainly better than before.
Okay.
Because as opposed to how things were in 3rd edition, we have much more focused units. These are your fast units. These are your monster hunters. These units will counter cavalry. These are your precision killers with blade lords. They can also bodyguard. So we are much better than we were before. But there are some misses, like the ballista. Some points that some units fill similar roles, and that is mainly regarding the infantry.
Yeah.
Apart from the river blades, again, our infantry units don't have. I think they will fight for the same spots in lists, and we will have some clear winners. Blade Lords, in my opinion, others may think otherwise. So I think we're good, better than before for sure, and with a few tweaks, most things will be even better, in my opinion, regarding the internal balance. And again, apart from ballistas, anything is fixable,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Lore Seeker is also super weird, so that's the second Warscroll I would say is...
Yeah, with some point reductions, perhaps.
Yeah, but even with point reductions, I just don't see him being useful at all. But that's a conversation for the next video. As a small counterpoint to your argument about the infantry models, actually I think it's quite cool that Wardens, Blade Lords, the Stone Guard, and the Yggdrasil River Blades are all 140. And while they do sort of similar things, as in damage-wise, I don't necessarily agree that there's a clear winner. They are the river blades are very weight of dice. The stone guard are massively better when they get fully buffed. The wardens are amazing still on the charge, ironically, because they just have a lot of dice. But the blades are such high quality attacks and are so reliable that I do feel that while I agree with you that people will feel like there's a clear winner, I think a lot of people will have different clear winners. And I like that you can kind of swap them around depending on your list building and what your list is looking like hero-wise. And you don't feel bad about, for example, not bringing Blade Lords or not bringing River Blades or something like that. So I actually like the way that our infantry is right now. Ryan, maybe you can cover the external battles, or Seek, do you want to get back to me on that first?
Oh no, I think we will see in practice how things will unfold, because again, it's still very early. Well, it's my main gripe is with infantry, but again, we'll see.
Yeah. Okay, Ryan, externally balanced. How do you feel that Lumineth is doing right now?
Yeah, I'm gonna approach this kind of like lumping in impact on the meta because it's way too early to say.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I'm just gonna, and again, I haven't looked at all the rules of even a third of the armies because I'm still working through everything and on my kind of level. But I will say, like I mentioned before, I really feel like this army feels just like all around with a couple misses very strong. I feel like it's got a much more unique identity compared to some of the other armies out there. Like I've read Gitz's rules. I don't feel like Gitz is inspiring me to play it. And like it's okay, but like this army really, like I've had Lumineth since Settlers Again was announced, and now all the like, but I never really wanted to play it. Like I never kind of got myself into the headspace. I did it for Worlds, but like now I actually like legitimately have thought about maybe I'll start with Lumineth. Like and that's, I mean, that's cool.
One of us.
I mean, I've always, I feel a little bit like one of y'all, but
yeah.
But I just think the rules are really interesting. There's a lot of playroom in there, and you know, the big thought I thought about was also was like, you know, let's say that the lists really are a lot smaller, and I think that's also going to help the games play faster. I could see a world where I want to play 2,500 point games now.
Yeah,
you know,
maybe.
just to get a little more in there to see more interactions. But anyway, in terms of like the rest of the meta, comparing them to some of the other armies I've seen, I feel like it's just got so many cool things going on and feels like I still don't get cities. I'm gonna throw that out there. I still don't get cities. You know, I think it actually feels notably less one nodey than it used to feel, Lumineth. And
Fully
that's
agree.
not something I can say about every army. So I actually think this is a great time to be a Lumineth player. So I don't know. I'll have to get back to you on that once I've broken down more books. But at the moment, I think this is a great faction, and it's going to attract people to the faction. I think not just the people that liked all the little details and all the magic phase stuff. It's going to play a lot faster. It's going to hit a lot harder. It's going to have a lot more movement shenanigans. It's going to be less castly, I think.
Yeah.
Like just really cool. I think you're going to be able to really develop yourself playing this army, and maybe not all the other armies out there are going to feel like that much.
Yeah, piggybacking on that, because I feel like we're coming to the closing thoughts with that. I wholeheartedly agree with everything you've said so far, Ryan, and I would even say it is as I'm building lists, as I'm analyzing all this stuff, as I'm making videos and PowerPoints, I'm the happiest I've ever been when it comes to Lumineth list building. I feel much less restricted, even though it's complicated. I think almost all of the units feel like I could fairly give them a shot. I can do something well in every phase without having to completely bend my list towards a specific purpose. I'm finally rid of the castle build. I'm finally rid of the warden tax. Man, what a time to be alive. I'm super, super stoked to play this index. I'm really, really looking forward to it a lot. I think you're somewhat in the same boat, right, Sieg?
Yeah. I'm very much excited, and this is the best version of Lumineth we've had thus far. If I had to say it in one phrase.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually a really big compliment to GW that I want to give now. They could scrap all the battle formations, they could scrap all the artifacts, and I would still feel like this is an amazing index that we just received. Just their Facets of War and their Warscrolls are amazing in and of themselves.
Yeah.
Jonas, maybe it'd be nice for just to touch base on our faction focus and how has your opinion changed over the evolution of seeing from the Expo game that got played
to the question.
Focus and to this? Maybe we can do that with each one of these indexes.
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. I was actually feeling pretty hyped about the Lumineth stuff already because just the Facets of War tell us a story that I wanted to be told. Now that I've seen all of the Warscrolls, I can finally rest easy. I was very annoyed that I didn't get to see Teclis. I understand why now. It would have been way more doom and gloom back then if that was what we got to see. So Alani and Elithor hyped me up sufficiently. And I that hype carries through to the index. I think it's even better than I expected. I'm super, super stoked. Very happy.
Yeah. And what about your Teclis video?
Well, I got a lot of things wrong as I predicted. I think I approached almost 40% of it. I got a lot of the stats sort of right and the initial approach to his ward save and his spells dropping off and all that stuff. But I definitely didn't expect them to give him a really weird rampage and the +1 to cast bubble. I thought that would for sure be gone. But I'm happy that they retained his 4 auto casting stuff. I actually thought about, I mentioned in the video as well, I finally stuck to the D6 damage in the end for the Storm of Searing White Light, but my initial approach to it was the roll D3 for each and inflict the amount of mortal wounds starting from a 2 or 3, well, something like that. So I actually had my gut feeling was right, but then I changed it back to how it used to be before. So it was a little bit, I chickened out. I thought that would be too weak.
Okay, yeah, nice. I mean, I was never really down about the process, but there were definitely factions that I was, so I'm curious to see what I end up saying about those once I see them. But yeah, Siegfried, do you want to say anything before we close out here?
Well, I'm very much excited. I think it was good that they didn't include Teclis in the in the faction focus because out of context it would look really bad. As I said, the best version of Lumineth thus far. I'm just excited to have games and play with my friends and go to tournaments and give it all a spin and see what's what. So, yeah, pretty hyped.
Yeah,
nice. Well, thanks for being on the video. Obviously, you're a recurring guest, obviously, and then evidently you're going to be on a couple of the videos. You guys spoil what you're going to be doing next week, or you want to keep that secret?
Well, we're working on the Warscroll breakdowns. I finished the PowerPoints today, and we've recorded almost all of it. I just have to record the Alrith stuff, and then we'll be ready. And I'll gradually upload them while I'm on, and so they can come out. They can come out when I'm on holiday. So yeah, Siegfried's been a massive help there because I always feel weird talking about stats by myself because I feel so unsure about the things that I'm thinking back at that time. So I'm happy that there's someone to check my my stuff, and even then I think we still got some things wrong, but that's bound to happen.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm looking forward to catching them.
Yeah. Well, if you guys are fine with that, we can end the video here. First of all, I want to thank Ryan and Siegfried for freeing up the time to do this index. And thank you, Ryan, that you allowed me to do the Lumineth index first. I was so hyped, and I'm bound to leave for the holiday. So I just wanted to get that out as soon as I could, as quickly as I could. So I'm very happy that we managed to do it. And that is still the quality that we expected, hopefully. But guys, I also want to thank you all for watching and listening. I know that the Lumineth players have been eagerly awaiting our content, so I've got that hype to look forward to. Please leave a like and a comment. You know that's the best way to show your support and your enthusiasm for our content. But you can also subscribe if you want to stay in touch for those Lumineth breakdowns that are coming, the Warscroll breakdowns. And if you want to get in touch specifically with either one of us or one of the very clever people in the Discord, if you want to talk to Agaroth about his Sanctum trick, for example, you can join our Discord as well. The link for that is in the description. Ryan, thank you. Siegfried, thank you. And guys, we will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.